Hello there and welcome on into the NA Build Finals of the Fortnite PlayStation Cup. I am Miniman and delighted to be your host and caster for today, of course, but joining me is none other than Jacob PR. Now, Jacob, we had the pleasure of watching EU Zero Build go down yesterday. We have NA competition today. Is the hype almost increased?
I think it has increased. I think Zero Build has garnered a lot of fans to go ahead and play it, but I think Builds, that is where Fortnite begins. That is where Fortnite really shines, and I think the solo competition, we're going to see some individuals shine today like never before.
Yeah, we really didn't get to see too much solos, but speaking of which, let's take a little look at the format of how we've got to this very point right here and how today is going to break down. We've had two qualifiers, of course, leading into the finals right here, right now. Of course, it's going to be a battle royale, 100 players across 6 games. And remember, this is 100 of the best players of these qualifiers. 50 from each one made their way to the finals today. And of course, we need to get some points. How are these players going to go about getting them, Jacob?
Well, obviously, the placement points for sure. And if you look at it, 75th place when they begin to ring in, but it's not really until that top 8 to where you start collecting the majority of those points, and business as usual, it's 2 points per elimination. And if EU Zero Build yesterday told us at least a little bit of the story, it's consistency that is key, because our winner yesterday didn't win a single game but still won the entire event.
That's absolutely right. Consistency is key if you want to find yourself at the top of the leaderboard. And the very top of the leaderboard is very fruitful indeed. $2,500 going to our first place player today. But what I really love about this, Jacob, is that everyone walks away with cash.
Yeah, and I think they deserve it as well, because it was grueling. It was hard to get it to this point. We had FNCS champions from the PC side of things try to switch on over to PlayStation and didn't even make it this far. So it goes to show we have 100 of the best players in this lobby fighting for that prize pool today.
Absolutely. If you want to catch up with some more PlayStation content, maybe you want to have some tips and tricks, then of course make sure to check out the PlayStation Esports YouTube. You can find that at youtube.com/PlayStation Esports. The latest video on there is actually some tips on how to play with the controller, some DualSense Edge tips on both FPS and Battle Royale, Jacob. So maybe some of these players have been watching that.
Yeah, I might have to get some of those tips. I got a PlayStation downstairs as well. I like to play it to kind of show off to when I have people over at the house. So I might have to watch it so that way when I show off, I really look good.
Yeah, you'll be showing off. And who else will be showing off today? Of course, it will be our qualified players, the stars of the show for today. Are there any names on this screen here, Jacob, that stand out to you?
Yeah, I think I mentioned some FNCS finalists here. We got Pump, we got Amizi. I like Pump because somebody once told me that he looked almost like my little brother. I saw it, and now I can never unsee it. So I'm cheering for my brother today.
You know, I can actually see that. I can see that being a thing. Maybe he is. Maybe he's your long-lost brother. Who knows? But that's how it's going to be. This is, of course, all of our players are going to be taking part today. Some of which, of course, native to the console platform. But some, Jacob, have sort of moved from PC to console for this very event. Do you think that's going to have an impact?
Yeah, I think it's going to have a little bit of impact, especially if you're not able to get used to it right away. And then you're going up against, players like FaZe, who is here. He's a console cup champion. He's been in this position before. And I think he's fighting. He's not only fighting for himself, but he's fighting for all the console players around the world.
Yeah, it's great to see. We have a little bit of a mixture of some keyboard and mouse players, of course, as well as some controller players, I'm sure, going to be competing today. I think it's going to be very, very exciting to see which of our players are going to come out on top, because solos is just that. You're on your own. You don't have any teammates. You don't have any team members to help yourself out. So this is where it all starts to get real. Of course, if you guys want to compete in some of other PlayStation competitions that are on offer, then make sure to check out compete.playstation.com. Maybe you're going to get inspired by some of our gameplay today, and maybe, of course, you might want to find a teammate for some of those events, and maybe might make some friends inside of the community as well. If you want to do that, then of course make sure to check out the PlayStation Tournament Community Discord server. Of course, you can find regular updates on esports events, articles, videos, and of course meet with others to improve your game and meet with some like-minded individuals. Jacob, I'll definitely be in there. How about you?
I'm already in there. I got some players lined up. I'm not necessarily the best solo guy myself, so I'm looking for duos, trios, squads. So when we hit that island, we hit it hard.
We're definitely hitting the island very, very shortly as well. The Battle Royale, of course, the Battle Bus will be leaving the island very, very shortly. But before we do get into that, let's talk about how we're going to be seeing things go down today. Game number 1, of course, starting very, very shortly. We've had a little sneak peek of the drop map so far, Jacob. Some interesting contestations going on. I think we said, is it 5 players landing at Naughty Nets?
Yeah, I think it was last time we saw it was like 5 players at Naughty Nets, which honestly, there's not a lot of loot there, even for a singular squad. So it's surprising to see who's going to come out on top. You got our mythic vaults that have a lot of contestation, particularly Sanguine Swedes. But there's so much loot over there. I can kind of see players maybe not necessarily fighting, grabbing some loot, disengaging, just try to play the game out. And you know, we're going to see a massive change from the zero build side of things today. And I asked you yesterday, what is the mini miner preferred loadout going into this solo build competition?
Well, I mean, we talked about it yesterday, as you mentioned. Zero build is very, very different to build. But you know what? I think the loadout is very, very similar. Of course, you don't have shockwaves, you don't have the bunkers. So for me, the ideal loadout, I want to be carrying that twin mag, particularly for the scope salvo. I want to be carrying the twin mag with the scope salvo all win to get those storm surge tags nice and early. The damage that thing can output is absolutely insane. We'll see a lot of that today. In terms of shotgun, sharp tooth, 100%. That's going to go straight in there. I don't think the other shotguns quite match up to it when it comes to solos. You want to be hitting that big damage. Maybe if you're one of those sort of players that likes to hop in the box, that Maven could be the best option. But yeah, for me, that's what it's going to be. We do have snipers, of course, in competitive. Maybe I would be taking one of those. I am the self-proclaimed best sniper in Europe. I'm not, but I just like to say I am. So maybe I'll put a sniper in there. Of course, you have to have slurp juices in there, of course, as well. But yeah, I'm trying to think about how I'd fill the other slot. Maybe some pizza. If we have some pizza in the game, you know, I want to be taking some of that because that's a very good heal. What about you? Have you got any preferences, or do you agree with me?
I agree with you most of the part, but, you know, I had pizza yesterday, so I'm thinking slurp juices. I'm probably thinking maybe double slurp juices because of the forecast towers, the caches, a lot of opportunities to grab those. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, but maybe I'm grabbing the rocket ram as well. I think it's high risk, high reward. You can get a little bit more in zero builds because you could build right after crash landing, but it's definitely going to be tough. In a game full of solos, multiple people see you flying through the sky, you become a target, and then that twin mag AR that you talked about with scope salvo, maybe you add in first assault as well. 0 to 100, get beamed out of the sky, but I think I'm the risky type of guy.
Yeah, I think definitely in builds that rocket ram definitely becomes more viable. We saw it a lot yesterday, as you mentioned, people using the rocket ram getting absolutely beamed out of the sky or landing and then getting beamed because there's no builds. You can't actually build to protect yourself. But today we have a little bit of a different landscape. Of course, you can build to protect yourself. You can use other people's builds to make it a little bit more of an easy rotation in the later stage of the game. So yeah, you're definitely right. Rocket rams are going to be vital today. Maybe we'll see some players carrying, of course, the Crash Pad Juniors. Maybe we'll see those in play. I've not seen any of it so far. So I'm hoping that this is the first time, because this is the first time we're seeing a proper solos tournament inside of this new season, Jacob. We have the solo victory cups, but they're a slightly different format. But how about a regular solos event?
Yeah, I think it's going to kind of down to consistency overall. I spoke about it just a little bit to start the show. On the EU side of things, that's what actually won it all. We're even seeing some clips here of Toxic Tryhard. This was game number 1. He had 10 eliminations to take that game overall. He landed quickly into that first place slot, but as the day went on, he kind of slipped up a little bit. Some of our other players slipped up a little bit, and then it came down to just straight consistency and a win by 1 point for ZMax.
Yeah, and what I really love about looking back towards yesterday's competition as a sort of framework for how today's going to go is that although it was zero builds, completely different sort of game mode, completely different format, it's the same solos competition. It's still on console. I think we're going to see a lot of the similarities. I think we'll maybe see a little bit more consistency for one of our players. If one of our players turns up today, it's it's a lot easier to be consistent when it comes to builds. You're not relying on the RNG of zones. You're not relying on the RNG of getting bunkers, getting shockwaves in the mid game when you're looting off spawn as well. I think that's going to be the most important thing. So consistency definitely will be a key word that we're going to be talking a lot about today. And as I mentioned, Jacob, this is the first sort of time we're seeing a non-Victory Cup solo event this season. And I think consistency definitely has to play a part. Those that can drop a big game will be beneficial. But if you can't keep doing that, you're going to struggle.
Yeah, and honestly, we named a couple names and we saw the qualified player list, but I truly believe there's going to be a bunch of names that we may not even recognize that are rising to the occasion, because we've seen it so many times before in years prior. Our players starting off on these consoles and really making a name for themselves, and then they're boosting into superstardom. So this could be the beginning of somebody's Fortnite career here today, and if they can carry that momentum into future seasons, I expect them to be on the top of their game time and time again.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yesterday, one of the main talking points from us was that we didn't really get to see too much mythic action when it came to the new POIs. Of course, there's 3 new POIs that can get, of course, 1 mythic from each of those. So there's potential for 3 mythics to be involved in every single game. Do you expect there to be more mythics involved today? Maybe the MK, maybe we'll see some variety in that as well? Or do you think it's going to be same old, same old?
I think we have more of a chance. I think we definitely have more of a chance, because depending on what mythic you grabbed yesterday, it may not have been fruitful for zero builds overall. You may have to drop it for the bunkers, the shockwaves, there's almost more important items than those mythics. But now that you're able to kind of use one of those extra item slots to go ahead and carry the mythic or anything else that you choose, and then the safety of being able to box up and use them from a distance or close range, depending on which one you grab, I think it's going to make more of a prominent showing here. But with 100 players and only 3 possible mythics, I think it's going to be hard to see them kind of shine overall.
Yeah, definitely will. I mean, speaking of differences from what we saw yesterday, we sort of talked a lot about the Forecast Tower and, of course, the Rift Island being in the game. But yesterday, it kind of panned out a little bit differently. We didn't see players just going straight for it. We didn't see players that were actually fighting straight on it. We saw a little bit less aggression going towards them. Do you think that's because they're not getting points, or do you think it's not as valuable in zero build and we'll see more of that action today?
I think it's just a mixture of both. And not getting the points means it's not worth the risk, and especially in solos, it's almost like a game of chicken. Who's going to peek out first? Even if you get the elimination, there's still that loot, and then in the zero build side of things, you got no cover. So if you didn't have a bunker, it's very, very, almost even near impossible to go ahead and gather that loot. But here in zero build, or here in regular build competition, I think it's going to be more prominent. Players are going to make a little bit more risky plays to try to go ahead and not only get the loot that goes with taking down the vault or the boss, but the actual forecast tower as well to read those zones.
100%, but the wait is over. Game number 1 is kicking off right now. The PlayStation Cup, the NA build competition starts right now. Who's going to take the first game by storm, and who's going to get set up for success as early as possible? We're going to be catching up with which of our players going to be landing where. We talked a little bit about the drop map at the beginning, potentially a huge contestation at Naughty Nets, and it doesn't seem like it's quite panning out like that right now, with a lot of players in the area kind of avoiding the Naughty Nets area. We get to see the distribution of all of our players landing, and as you see, some players landing at the new POIs, those new mythic POIs, fantastic drop spots. What do you expect to see in first game, Jacob? Are we going to be seeing some players that are going to be trying to mark their spot almost, or are we going to be seeing a little more passive?
No, I think exactly what you said. The players want to mark their territory. They want to try to push everybody else off. Out of 100 players in this hobby, only 12, in theory, through that drop map are uncontested. So we're going to see a lot of action early on, unless somebody just doesn't like their loot and they try to disengage. But Yoimi, he's quickly right out of the gates. Even though it's just a thermal DMR, he's just trying to put it to use, get that early damage, and try to back his opponents off.
Scoping right here, who was actually appearing in some of our action yesterday, I believe. Which is great to see. Weasel on the screen too. Looking like they're a little bit contested at Sanguine Suites. Not a crazy amount of people potentially landing here, because of course there is a plethora of chests on offer, you know, comparatively to some of the other drops that we're seeing a lot of people landing at. You know, having 5 or 6 people landing here is not too much of a concern.
Yo, quick, how many players are actually at Sanguine? Go ahead, count them. Count them.
I mean, there's NPCs, you know, you're trying to do me here.
I think it's about 5. 2, 3. Nah, I got 5. You. It's about 5 real players. But that's the tricky thing about these vaults also, because a lot of players use those audio visuals to try to figure out where their opponents are at. You have to be very, very careful when you're going around these mythic vaults, especially when that mythic is actually grabbed out. Even more of them spawn to try to make a little bit of annoyance. So being caught off guard is a very, very prominent thing here towards these vaults if you don't pay attention. You see Elu's already trying to use a little bit of his elevation to sneak on some players. He hears the action going down, and instead of just B-rushing and getting greedy for an elimination, he's just trying to farm up. This is build, so having a lot of builds in these fights early on is very, very crucial.
Yeah, I think one of the most difficult things about these new drop spots is, of course, the lack of materials that are at these new places. There's not a plethora of metal or brick in the area. There's a decent amount of wood, but you're not going to be able to get those materials up as quick as you can in other places. So I think that's going to be something that these players have to keep in mind if they are landing at these newer drop spots. Not only the fact that, of course, they need to get the materials, but also rotate on out as well. Lots of players will be looking to third party. Excursion right now looking to take out the lobby or try and sort of survey the area at Naughty Nets. Of course, we know how congested this area has potential to be, and I'm liking the outfit choice right now, potentially maybe going back in the water in a second to rotate on out. It does seem as though there's a lot of players at Naughty Nets, Jacob. I think this is a bit of an over-contestation with the amount of loot that's here.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I'm actually surprised that there's no real fighting right out of the gates. And I think since there's not a ton of loot over towards Naughty Nets, if you're not going like Excursion to try to capture the point, you should probably be looking to disengage. Leave the island quick, because you don't want to be one of the last ones standing and everybody makes you a target because they know you got to cross those open waters. Even though there's about 2 zip lines, one towards the north, one towards the south, you don't want to have that be your only exit. So being able to think quickly and try to get off Naughty Nets is going to be crucial.
Yeah, 100%. Just making sure that they play their cards right off spawn is going to be the most important aspect as we see the loadout start to form. The rocket ram early on in the inventory, which is great. Contar right now as well, carrying the Crash Pad Juniors. I want to see someone use the Crash Pad Juniors in late game. I'm yet to see it. Maybe it's just from what I've seen in some of the games that I've played and some of the games that I've watched, but I want to see it, all right? I want to see it.
I could see it being a possibility if somebody tries not to use the rocket ram, or maybe switches it out later on in the game. You go for a play in high ground, and then you can kind of build a little bit of a sky base, build all the way up, because you know you don't really have to worry about the fall damage thanks to those Crash Pad Juniors. It's just, you know, a little theory crafting going on as Excursion. Not only does he get the point, he gets the information on all the opponents that are still around towards Naughty Nets, and this is where he's going to get not only those heals, the slap effect, but he's just trying to get a lot of that metal up as well. Naughty Nets, there's a lot of brick, there's a lot of wood you can gather, but there's not as much metal, so him really thinking outside of the box to gather as much of it as he can is actually pretty smart.
Yeah, 100%, especially since you get, of course, those slap barrels there. They're really useful for just gathering metal, as you mentioned, just actually at a drop spot that doesn't really have too much of that. So we switch on over towards Expo. Shady still. It's quite a contested area as well. We see a lot of players in the surrounding area. Looks as though this could be one of those sort of situations that we saw a little bit yesterday of players using the grind vines, going up in the trees. But of course you can't build in the trees, so you have to be very, very careful. Essentially we're seeing the first battle for this vault, the Mythics becoming such an important part of build, such an important aspect of it, because those players that have the Mythics, not only do they pack a punch the Mythics, most of the time, everyone else in the lobby also knows that you have them. If you hear the deafening sound of that MK assault rifle spraying people down at an unbelievable rate, you just know that that's not an area that you want to be pushing into. So just that scare factor that those Mythics can have is almost worthwhile going for in itself.
This is a little bit of a cheeky strategy. They're just trying to farm up, get the resources, and just camp the vault. There's like the forecast keys, all the keys on the map, they kind of show up. So they know exactly where this player's at. They know exactly when he's going to try to make a play. Eluz is going to be the first one he kind of runs into here for a moment. And he has all that real estate towards the bottom. But you notice he has heals, but no HP heals. And I think Chicha here realized that as well. And instead of overstaying the welcome, just trying to rotate on out, saying you're going to have to run into me sooner or later thanks to the zone.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to see a little bit of that today, as we saw a little bit yesterday. It's games of chess at these vaults. It's one of those, who's going to make the first move? I think once someone opens that vault, it's just time to go. Dolza going back inside of the storm. Maybe potentially using these shield flowers. I always call them mushrooms, but they're actually flowers, to get a little bit more HP. Actually must have identified as a refresh right there. That's absolutely perfect.
Interesting for him not to use that shield fish pretty quick, but he's probably on the move, realizing he doesn't want to waste too much of the HP. Excursion already rotating out of Naughty Nets, trying to find himself on the edge of zone. And this is why I say rotating quick off of Naughty Nets is going to be crucial, because you got to realize as soon as this gets more and more congested, it's going to be harder and harder to enter in from this side of the map, especially since it does look like it's going towards the south, maybe a little bit more towards the west. So a lot of players have to be ready for every one of these moves, because they don't know exactly where the zone's going to go unless they get that forecast tower.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think the forecast tower is going to be a vital aspect of these players' mid-game rotations. Of course, late game it helps out a little bit as well, but just being able to be set up for success early on is going to be absolutely crucial. I'm sure there'll be plenty of players that will be fighting out for those forecast towers, even though they don't give any points in this particular competition. Just the power to be able to know where the next zones are is absolutely worth it in itself. Very similar to the how the Storm Scout Sniper worked back in the day for those that are OGs to playing Fortnite. I don't even know when that was in the game. It was a good while ago, but it was one of those sort of items that definitely helped out, and you can get that in the current season. But for Fago, they're getting straight inside of the box. They're not even worrying about the next zone. They're getting straight inside, picking up the first of their eliminations and getting a huge loot refresh as well. The rocket ram could be an option, but they're saying no. I want to try and find more. I want to go crazy here.
Yeah, double fights going down at the same time. Contour versus Breitner on the other side. I was thinking, looking at the mini-map, they're probably going to join hands, make them a focus, but it's just two separate fights going down, and great move to go ahead and get the high ground and just get out of this position. I think fighting this very, very early has too much of a risk versus the reward. Yeah, you can get a refresh. Yeah, you can get some loot, but it puts you in a position to where every other solo in the lobby is going to look in that direction and try to make you a target.
Yeah, for sure. So many of these sort of fights in solos as well. You get to a stage where if you fight for so long, you almost have to close it out one way or another. So identifying that that is how the fight's going to play out early enough on means that you don't get stuck in that situation where actually I've only got 2 bills, I need to try and fight this guy or else my game's over. So I like the plays from the players early on, showing how they're playing it out for the long game. Of course, 6 games of competition here. If you have just joined us, we're here for the NA Builds PlayStation Cup Finals. 100 of the best PlayStation players qualified through, and this is now the final. 6 games to make their mark and to compete for the huge prize pool at the end. It's definitely worth playing out these games. It's definitely worth playing the long game.
Yeah, this is going to be a hard rotate for some if they choose to go across the water late. Saw a couple early rotations using a launch pad that's there on one of those boats. We switch on board my brother here, Elite Pump, and he's just rotating through Mega City, not wasting too much time. He realized how dangerous it can be. He's already in the zone. He's looking to go even deeper towards the center. The only thing you got to watch out for there is that common Maven shotgun. We talked about the differences, what shotguns players really utilize, and that's why you see him finally beelining it towards the cache. He wants a huge upgrade when it comes to his inventory. Arsenic's trying to do the same thing, but now he becomes a focus to multiple players here in the lobby. Somebody even ends up in the box and takes him out, sends him back, and finishes his game 1 early.
Wow, I think that was C4 right there from one of our players. Maybe even Pump looking at his inventory. That's such a prominent item in the Fortnite meta right now in builds, because so many people are taking them, so many people are using them just to do exactly that. Clean up fights, break builds really, really quickly, and you can see the results for Pump. That has just got him one of those brand new Sharp 2 shotguns as of this season. Fantastic shotgun. So many players will be keeping their eyes on top of that. And wow, maybe he's getting a little bit too greedy here. Wants another one. He says 1 cache is not enough. I want 2.
Yeah, for him, it's probably going after the elimination points, then you add in another slurp juice or grouping of it. If Pump can somehow get 4 slurp juices on his hand, he's going to be one of the favorites to make it far here in this lobby. On the other side, he's going against Cardi, and Cardi's being backed down little by little. Pump's not afraid to expend a lot of these mats. He knows he's going to be able to pick up more, and he got what he came for overall, trading out those big pots for the 2 extra slurps. And now he has an extra slot as well. The choice is definitely Pump right here, because he's, I think right now, one of the few that are not afraid to go ahead and push one of these teams in the lobby.
Yeah, Pump's such a talented fighter, of course, as you mentioned, FNCS Grand Finalist. I remember watching Pump all the way back in Chapter 2, late Chapter 2, Season 7, Season 8, when he was just sort of breaking into the scene, in the collegiate scene, and he was different. You could tell back then that he was one of those players that will make it to the top, and he's showing that prowess in the fights right now, as is Grimm's just trying to get inside of this box, but trying to pick up his first elimination, looking to try and take the wall as much as he can, but playing the nice angles, trying to play the peaks. He doesn't have the Sharp 2 shotgun, so maybe the damage from range might be a little bit nerfed, but he's still trying to go for the shot, still trying to go for the damage, but unfortunately it results in him taking some damage, and now he has to retreat. This is an awkward situation, but for the other player on the other side, they're quite happy with that damage, particularly since they have an elimination. Storm Surge shouldn't be a problem. It looks as though they were fighting over a cache, and this player on screen has won it.
Yeah, you see now he gets the pick of the litter, choosing to use the big pot first before picking back up the splashes. Just has to be very, very careful here on this next rotate, though, because of him fighting is stalling himself. And you see in the mini-map, a lot of those teams are already beginning to make their own rotation. And we know some of those players that are already there, they were boxed up, fighting for their own cash themselves, so they got a huge upgraded loadout themselves. And because of Grimes just getting pushed back little by little, he has a decision. He either waits for all this loot and scavenge what's left, or he rotates early and he's stuck with what he has now.
Yeah, he could even try and find himself another cache, knowing how the caches spawn, of course, on the congested side of zone on the edge of that third. As we see the Force Zone reveal itself, that of course means the Rift Island shall reveal itself, and we already see a lot of players just sort of surrounding the island below it, and only one player making their way up on top. So we don't see a fight for it yet, but we often do. We often see almost stalemates, particularly when the island is worth points, which, by the way, it isn't today. It's definitely going to be one of those situations where do players want to go for it for the loot? If they need to, they might have to go for it, but I think when it doesn't get you those points, how valuable will it be for these teams? I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, for some that don't have the heals, that don't have the weapons, it's probably one of the more valuable things, especially if they got pushed off their cash. But for Yasir, it's just about bolstering the loadout, making it that much better. He already has a slurp juice, he has 2 different big pots that you saw, and now he's just trying to get 3 overall slurp juices. And then depending on what pours out of the loop, maybe he wants that mythic infiltrator. I know you're a little bit of against it, but it definitely gives him a little bit more flexibility and choices. And then obviously he has the high ground thanks to the island as well, just to terrorize anybody that might be below him. But sooner or later, he he, just like the rest of the lobby, is going to have to rotate towards the zone as well.
Holding on to the Crash Band Juniors. That's what I like to see. Keeping hold of them. Actually taking the Sharp 2 shotgun over that Mythic Infiltrator. I think in builds, it's just not the preferred shotgun. I think if you want close range, you take the Maven. If you want long range, then you take the Sharp Tooth. I think the Infiltrator kind of sits in between. And a lot of players will like that. They'll like that versatility. They'll like that almost Swiss Army knife type shotgun. But for this one, this is not really as valuable for these top-tier players. For Fago, picking up yet another elimination. That's his third of the game. Getting pressured by players inside of the zone, though, and that's what we were talking about earlier. You have to choose. Do you want to fight and play a little bit more later on in terms of the rotation, or do you decide to get inside a zone early and potentially get yourself set up for success? For Stacks, though, they're trying to do exactly that. They're just sitting inside of the zone, looking at players that are later on rotating in, of course, maybe fighting for those caches or indeed that Rift Island, in his case right now, but he can't quite find any damage. Maybe the Storm Surge might play a part today. We'll have to see how the games pan out, but in this particular game hasn't quite been a factor yet. But I'm liking the loadout right now, Jacob. This is what we talked about earlier. Maybe barring some slurp juices, this could be the ideal loadout for today.
Yeah, if I don't get a slurp juice, I would definitely be okay with the loadout just like this. It allows him multiple times to get up to 100 shields. The HP is a whole different story, but at least he has that gold sharp tooth that you're talking about. He has a twin mag. The only thing that's really lacking right now in terms of his overall loadout is those builds. He has little brick, about half the wood, and so same could be said for the metal. And I like this picture of the zone. Even though it did pull south more times than not, it's kind of centering up on that south side of the zone. And since there's a lot that is still over water, you got to imagine that setting yourself up at the edge of where the island actually ends and the water is a good spot. And there's only one person there, and it's close to the center of zone as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, in Stacks' case, he's landing all the way up at Breakwater Bay, so it's understandable why he doesn't have the builds looking at where the current zone is. For this player on screen right now, 2 slurp juices in 2 slots. This is looking pretty good. He gets beam, but oh no. It's fine.
What will
he has
he
the
do?
slurp juices to heal up. What is he going to do? Top of slurp juice, he still has plenty more for the next rotates.
Yep. I think a lot of players will realize the slurp juice is kind of a prominent thing. So if you give too much time, a couple of seconds, even 30 seconds at that to kind of heal up, you got to imagine they're at full health and they're going to go ahead and continue on rotating forward. A lot of the players you can kind of see just raining down from the north side of the lobby, just trying to get themselves any bit of position in that zone towards Frenzy Field, but there's still a lot of teams there as well, already trying to meet them and gatekeep them out. And depending on what they have in their inventory as well, you could probably get them to expend a lot of builds, a lot of resources just to try to get into the zone.
See him trying to take some shots on the player that's just inside of this box. Right now, just trying to make sure that they can make their way into the zone, but no, there's a player in the bush. Could spell disaster, but of course the slurp juices will be the saving grace for now. If he can't get them off, he might get in trouble, but I think, yeah, 2 seconds for a slurp juice is going to be nice and easy for him. Be able to rotate on and through, and of course, the zone pulls back as well, which is a really, really good thing when you're on this side of the zone. All of the players on that congested side will be happy with that north pulling zone, but of course, if the players that have been, you know, you'd think more proactive and going towards the dead side, they've now got a massive rotation into all of the players that are already set up for success in zone, and it's going to be almost impossible for them to rotate in if they're not careful.
And right above him, he has that player position, Hyken. And Hyken's been doing a lot of damage here in this lobby. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to convert it to an actual elimination yet, because that would be very, very fruitful for his position. Don't key slightly, make it a more passive approach here. And a lot of these players that are kind of congested on this edge of the zone have an opportunity to move north of Frenzy Fields when it does open up, giving them a little bit more safety away from the rest of the team, or at least that's what you would typically see. But it's not going to be the easiest thing, and I saw on the feed, Vase taking down Omizi. Vase is a player I said you got to watch out for. I think he might have some of the most experience in these PlayStation Cups.
It's great to look at those sort of players, not only the big names in the sort of PC, FNCS world, but also the console ecosystem, the console community as well. That's all what we like to see. Console players showing what they can do in here, the PlayStation Cups, and 230 above for Don't Key slightly right now. Hasn't been keying, but getting the damage, which is absolutely vital. And for Stacks, you can see in the feed right there, his game is all but over. The long rotation would have been quite difficult for him, and you can see not that many players have to rotate in since there's so many people on that congested side of zone. And there's Vase picking up an elimination on the side of zone. We've got to be very, very careful, though, because, of course, these players are rotating. And there it is, the Crash Pad Jr. Yeah, see him, my friend. You've done it.
I think it makes for some of the perfect rotation with that roaming redeploy augment. Allows you to kind of glide through the sky, create a little bit more of a rotation than just kind of bouncing and hoping and praying for the best. FaZe is going to be one of the first players in this late game that's trying to make some noise and trying to make some claim to that high ground, and they do pull the zone on that side of the map as well. So an excellent decision for FaZe, and Yasir is kind of hunkered right beneath him, and careful is going to be the key for a lot of these players that are kind of stuck on this side of the zone for now, because a lot of those players on the north, on the east side are going to slowly but surely converge over in that direction and maybe try to make a claim for that position themselves.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Yasir actually managed to pick up that forecast tower, because of course he is landing at Brutal Bastion today, so maybe made the way towards the one to the west, just on that sort of icy lake where you can slide across the ice. Potentially might have access to the future zones. Scoping though, also carrying some crash pad units. There's a lot more usage of these than I was expecting, but has to make a little bit of a rotation. How's he going to do that? He's planning it out right now. 75 builds in the tank. Unfortunately getting looked at by a couple of the players right now, and this is what he can see. Look at this. How is he going to rotate this with all of these players already set up? Maybe going left is the option, maybe going into the storm or the current storm when it does open up into the zone. That could be the best option. You can see him right in the center of the screen right now, just trying to make that decision. The longer he waits to make this decision, the more people will be looking at him, and you can see it from the other angle right now. Yasir looking at scoping, trying to make the sort of sprays happen just to try and get the lobby to focus him, and there we go. There's another player that's starting to try and rotate on in. It's Yuumi who does go down, and that's the result. That's why scoping isn't trying to make a quick decision here. He's not trying to make a rash decision, because if he does, that's the result.
Yeah, and all these players, they've been here for at least 2 zones so far in this position, so they have all the information around the map, and finally we're seeing it. The MK Alpha Mythic variation really just putting a hurting. Nobody can really break through. I feel sorry for whoever gets targeted by FaZe right now, because it's going to be very, very hard to survive. He knows at least one more player is down there trying to use his heals to give him a little bit more chance in the storm to try to survive, but it's just like a hawk. He has those eagle eyes on him. He's not letting anything out of his sight. And it does look like finally everybody in the lobby is going to get blessed just a little bit, because even though FaZe is up there now holding the crown, he's going to have to maneuver off, because everybody gets the far pull that's currently sitting there.
Yeah, I like the idea from FaZe though. Just try and build up as high as he can to claim the high ground on this side of zone, if zone does pull his way, but very much unfortunately for him, it pulls the complete opposite direction. As we see him trying to use this, it's actually mobility method to actually phase inside of your cone, then use the rocket ram whilst you're actually in this phase state, and then go inside of the cone to keep yourself protected just as you're about to rotate using that rocket ram. Of course, we saw it so much yesterday. Players just getting exposed so easily when using that rocket ram. And there's plenty of different ways that players are rotating. Yasir opting to go for those crash pads, and of course combined with the glider redeploy, or the roaming redeploy I should say. It's a fantastic little combination, and something that I didn't even think about going into today. This is definitely going to be a lot more prominent, and maybe for this player right now, hopping straight into the box, picking up the second elimination of their game. I should say third, actually. They're on a roll, Jacob.
Yeah, they're definitely on a roll, making things work. They get that full refresh. Now look at their mass, look at their resources, look at some of the most healthy that you can be in the lobby as of now. Quickly turns on back, though, trying to figure out where's the right position, getting focus from all other angles. Finally, he finds a little bit of calm in this storm of madness. FaZe, he gets stuck from once one of the best positions in the game. Now he's almost looking like he needs a refresh in order to survive.
CR, though, looking good on the material side of things, looking good in the lobby as well right now, and looking good on the zones as well. A nice little zone pullback for him will be absolutely vital in his progression through this endgame. If he's able to pick up more refreshes like that, then I have no concerns for this player at all. Still 2 slap juices as well, still 3 of those slap splashes, so they can sustain themselves for a lot longer. Yasir all the way down on low ground, trying to play this little lower layer, hoping that nobody looks at him, because again, he has a really, really nice position to rotate into the zone. So many of the other players have to sort of straggle it out on the right side, but we can see him on the left side of zone right here, the west side, actually should have a free little rotation and relax. Grims right now, Grimes I think has actually taken out our player with the mythic assault rifle and will claim it for themselves.
Yep, and you see he's using that same strategy as well, phasing through the cone, trying to make this rocket ram rotate as safe as possible, and that's the difference between that and the crash pad. The crash pad allows you a little bit more safety, but doesn't give you as much distance as Josh takes down Botify. Grimes goes a little bit ahead, but he goes into the storm as well. Luckily for him, he does have that med mist to get himself back up to tip-top shape, and into the top 24 we go. But as I spoke early be honest. Not until you hit that top 8 do the points really start to make a difference. CR just going through all this madness. Combat SMG just trying to break the players down into his hands, but the exact opposite happens to him. He gets dropped down at least one more layer, but at least he finds some stability.
Pre-popping the slurp juice as well, but he didn't actually need to there in the end. Actually, the zone pulls back to him for Revise right now. Another one of our star-studded names inside the lobby, looking to get a little bit fraggy in this end game. Also pops the slurp juice, trying to look for an angle, a play, a way to get out, because he doesn't need the materials, he doesn't need the HP. He just needs to get his zone. He looks as though he's trying to go for height here. Revise trying to take height here in the 10th zone of the game, sneaking up on the player already up on height. Are they going to take height, or are they going to try and fight? He's going to take height. He's going to take it, but not much longer. Gets dropped all the way down, and that's the danger. Chapter 4, Season 4. Rocket Rams and height. It's like oil and water. It doesn't mix.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that you don't necessarily have a chance to plan for because you don't know when it's coming, but Relax Rhymes is doing everything right with the Rocket Ram, traveling from point A to point B, staying ahead of the zone. He just has to be able to be careful with the lack of resources and match. This is where things can come crumbling down as CR is doing what he can. He's running out of resources himself, but he's ready for the challenge. He's ready for the fight. Backs down at least one player, goes into the zone, use a couple slap splashes, but the fight will continue, and he has to think of something here. Otherwise, he's going to go down, taking so much damage. He still finds the elimination onto Grimes, getting himself into the top 3.
6 eliminations for CR right now. He's one of 2 players inside of the actual safe zone. Looks at that player up on height, has propped a slurp juice as well, so the limited materials down on low ground could spell the end for this game. But for Piggle, all the way up on top, looking strong, looking happy in the high ground position right now, as CR actually goes down to the storm. Blur Antics getting the credit for that, and now it's going to be a high ground, a classic high ground versus low ground. Blur Antics versus Piggle all the way up on high ground, looking to try and prevent himself from getting chopped out by that mythic NK. Trying to chop down, trying to drop down and take some shots onto Blur Antics. Does actually not connect with that first one. Can he connect with the second? He's not doing any damage to back. This is not going well for Piggle. Can he win it out?
Yeah, at least he has that slurp juice popping, so all this time that they're taking to finally engage in the final fight, he's at least getting at something to work with here towards the end, but Blur Antics just a little bit more healthy than possibly can be, just waiting for that perfect opportunity, but he's actually going to choose to disengage. He's going back. He's going to try and play toward that men miss. Piggle has no build, so this could be the perfect opportunity. A well-placed shot, maybe a couple beams coming out of Blur Antics could be the difference maker, and he does. Finally drops down, takes him out with 4 eliminations. He takes game 1.
Blur Antics, what an end game. I thought he went for the heal off too early. I think he identified it right there. He thought, you know what, I've done this too early. I can't do this. I can't sustain myself in the storm for too much longer. So he had to go back inside of the zone, take out Piggle right there at the end. Well-played shot, well-played end game from Blur Antics right there. And this is only game 1, Jacob. What a start.
Yeah, what a start, and what a smart play by Blur. I thought it was just going to go for the straight heal off in the end, but he realized his opponent had no builds. So all he was doing is just buying himself time to get his opponent out into the open. And I like Piggle as well. He tried to make a play. He realized, I'm not going to survive if I end up out in the open. He tried to go for the one pump, and it ended up going down to the wire with Blur Antics taking game number 1. And a huge opportunity to get himself an early lead.
Yeah, let's relive some of those moments from game number 1. What a game it was. We saw lots of action off spawn, lots of action in mid-game on, of course, the Rift Island. We saw it at the caches as well, and we saw so much action from some of our top-tier players, some of our top fraggers in the end game as well, one of which being CR. What a performance, Jacob.
Yeah, he's just not afraid to go into the box and send his opponent right back to the lobby. And there goes that game-winning play yet again from Blur Antics, using the med miss and the mind games to take away that top spot. And you can see already 38 points for his efforts, but only a 5-point differential between him and Piggle.
Yeah, this is just the standings from game number 1, so we get to see who actually gathered the most placement points, the most elim points as well from that game. And we can see lots of our players starting to figure out how things are going to go. Of course, this is only game 1 of 6. So for a lot of players, this is going to be a sort of a feeler game, see what's going to go on at their drop spot, particularly if you're landing at somewhere like Naughty Nets, where you have 4 other people contesting you. It's very, very vital to know how these games are going to play out, know how the players around you are going to operate. And we saw a few of our big names popping up, but not quite as much as we would have expected, particularly with Revise there at the end, getting chopped out by that rocket round.
Yeah, it just goes to show how volatile solos can actually be at any given moment, because you even saw Pump, someone who had 4 slurp juices. He was fighting players left, right, and center for those weapon caches, for all that loot, and didn't end up having what it takes to execute and kind of close it out at the end of the day. But just like you said, it's only game number 1. It's a marathon. It's not just a sprint here. So being able to stay consistent throughout these 6 games, I think is going to be more important than just one pop-off moment.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, we got our sort of first taste of how this PlayStation Cup's going to go today. And we got a first taste of sort of solo end games in the console sort of bracket, if you like. And it's going to be exciting to see how this pans out, because there was a lot of things in that game that I was quite surprised about, you could say. Quite almost shocked about. What would be your things that you would say the same for, Jacob?
To me, it's just we're seeing a little bit more of the rocket ram here in solos. I did think we were going to see more, but I think it's just the unorthodox thinking, comparing the augments with the crash pad juniors to give yourself that glider redeploy. And it's huge, because even though you don't get as much distance, the amount of safety you're able to have versus its counterpart is what really makes the difference. And that's something we saw Yasir do time and time again throughout that game, and then you see him now in the top 10.
Yeah, I think those Crash Pad Juniors just offer you a little bit more consistency when it comes to rotations, right? Of course, you have the rocket ram. You can fly up into the sky and end up in all manner of places when you end up landing. So I think those just give you a little bit more consistency, particularly when you can pull out your glider with that roaming redeploy. I expect a lot more players to be using that as well. Of course, we saw plenty of slurp juices in action as well. Players pre-popping slurps, using the phasing strategy, using that rocket ram as well. I think the meta is sort of just adjusting here, as well as C4 as well, Jacob. We saw a little bit of that from Pump, particularly in that mid game. Do you expect players to start using more C4, or is it going to be something that players just kind of ignore?
I think it's going to be something that players probably use as a trick underneath their sleeve, or maybe if they have an open loadout, they're just go ahead and grab it anyway, because you can kind of chain react those C4s together, peek a couple shots through, whittle down your opponent, and then make the decision if you want to kind of close it out or not. But just kind of be a primary item slot, I'm not too sure about that, but I think it's something that we're going to see in a couple of these games.
Yeah, of course, you spoke about him. Vase, one of our top players that we should be keeping an eye out on today, didn't quite pull that zone. He was set up for success on a high ground, looking really, really strong. What went wrong for him there?
You pulled the opposite side of the zone. You know as well as I do, everything can be looking good one moment, but if you don't really have what it takes to rotate from one side to the other, he did, I believe, had a rocket ram in him, so I got to imagine that might have played some part of him going down, whether he got targeted in the beginning or just maybe on the tail end. It's just one of those things. It's high risk, yes, but high reward if you're able to pull it off, but I just don't think it worked out for him in that game. But I do expect him to have the mental fortitude to be able to pick himself up, dust himself up, and give it another go here in game 2.
Yeah, of course, we saw some very, very difficult zones right there for a lot of our players. A lot of our players having to make some big rotations. Of course, Vase being one of those, landing at Eclipse Estates. He has to make a big rotation. Of course, our game winner, Blur Antics. I'm sure the Antics community will be very, very happy about him taking the dub. His drop spot is actually right where the game ended. Do you think that plays a massive factor in solos as we saw it play in that game?
No, I think it does, because then you're not having to make those risky rotations. It's almost like a double-edged sword, I would say, because you're not able to go far to get a lot of the different loots, especially if your cache come on and spawns maybe 200, 300, 400 meters away. But in terms of the zone, if you have everything you need off your drop spot, I think that plays a huge role.
Yeah, it definitely does, and I'm excited to see how these games progress, how these zones develop, who's going to be coming out on top, because we've only just seen a little taster of what to expect throughout the day. Blur Antics coming out on top in game number 1, 4 eliminations in his name as well right there, as we get to hop right back on the battle bus, and the players get to hop right on out for game number 2. How's this game going to go? Will we see some shifts? Will we see some changes? Will we see some adjustments from some of our players? We'll have to wait and see. Those questions will be answered right here in game 2 as we hop on board with Ballers, who's landing straight down.
Yeah, and interesting from the EU0 build side of things yesterday, it was about a 21-point lead after game number 1. And this one, it's literally only 4 points. It's very much more difficult to get those eliminations. Players are able to build. They're able to use different tactics to try to shield themselves and kind of get out safe. And now we're getting a taste. Where does Blur Antics land? You called that he landed towards the south side of the map, and you're kind of seeing it here play out overall. He's ready to make that risky play. He's not going to go all the way towards those mythic vaults. He's just going towards the outskirts, loot up everything around it, and then continue to make his moves from there.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe a strategy that Blur Antics could use later on. As I say that, he gets tagged out of the air. And of course, when you're landing in, you don't have any shield. This is not zero build. You don't have overshield. I think Blur Antics is just trying to land just on the outskirts here of Relentless Retreat to maybe look for some early Storm Surge tags, look to try and get as much damage as he possibly can. Almost falling down early on to that player that was taking some damage already. That's the danger, Jacob. That's the danger when you land a little bit further away from where your drop map is, of course, marking. You have to be careful of other players that are going to try and take advantage of that higher drop. For Blur Antics, it seems as though he knows this area well, trying to find some shield, making sure he can heal himself up before looking into Relentless Retreat, you have to imagine.
Yeah, it's about, like, I think 2 chests in this area, 1 heist bag. If he continues to go towards the south, where he's currently positioned, and then the east, that's where a lot of the other loot he's going to gather. As you see, Pump already taken down on one in the feed. Yasir, who made it far into that game, thanks to the Crash Pad Juniors and the roaming redeploy augment. You see, he lands over towards Brutal Bastion. Only 3 teams here this time around. Typically, you saw maybe 4, even 5 in yesterday's competition, but things slowing down just a little bit. It's a high-risk, high-reward side of the map. But I think Yasir, he lands here almost every single time, whether it's duos, trios, solos. He knows this terrain. He knows where everything's at, and he's just quick to loot it all up.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of playing Fortnite as well, knowing not only where all the chests and all of the loot is at your drop spot, knowing how to rotate at this drop spot, at any drop spot on the map. Whether you land there in different game modes, I think it definitely makes a difference. If you can know how to rotate where players are likely to land, where players are likely to fight in your sort of general vicinity of your drop spot, I think it absolutely is vital for a lot of these players. If we look at our second place player from game number 1, it's Pickle, who was playing high ground, had to try and drop down onto Blur Antics, but wasn't quite as successful as him in terms of the results of the game. And I like the way he was playing. I like the bold nature of the plays, trying to go up onto that high ground later on. I think it's the right time to take it as well for Pickle. And
just looking at that briefly, I can tell it's not going to be an eastern zone, probably not a southern zone as well. Maybe we're going to go towards the west, north. Possibility to center up, but I think as soon as you see that map, this is where your thoughts gotta start flowing, and you gotta start kind of theory crafting. You know, if it goes this direction, I'm ready to rotate. If it goes that direction, I'm ready to rotate. And I think a lot of these teams do have that experience, but they also gotta worry about surge along the way. We didn't really see it affect too much of the strategy in game 1, but I think as players begin to feel each other out, realize how the playstyle of the lobby is gonna be, I think it's become more and more prominent.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a great point, because as the tournament goes on, players will have to adapt. We talk so much about adaptability in Fortnite. For Weasel, he's having to adapt to another player that's right inside of his face right now, and adapt he does straight into the close proximity of Hypex right there. And what a shot that was, a crucial shot, because he got down to 43 white HP. He had to hit that there. If he didn't, his game was over, but he has the nerve, he has the skill to make it happen.
Yeah, I'm just noticing right now where Piggle landed just left kind of in towards Frenzy Fields, and so him and Blur Antics got the zone in that last game, and they used it to the fullest, really not having to do too much. Yagbeer on the other side, he lands on the split drop towards the top of the mountain, going against Grimes. Grimes took down some of our heavy hitters in that last game, but now he's going against one of the former NA West pro players before it kind of converged into the central region. Multi-time grand finalist, switching on over to the PlayStation for this console cup. He has more than enough shields to keep himself healthy. It's just what happens when things go wrong, if you're going to be ready for it. He's not backing down from Grimes, gets the cone, and now it's his battle for the taking. Grimes quickly playing on the defensive end, that stare and the wall to save his life here for a moment as Yagbeer forced to reload. His breath of fresh air is what Grimes needs to use to figure out what he's going to do to defend this even more.
Yeah, it's a really difficult fight to take, and we talked about it in the last game in almost the exact same area about when is it worth to disengage from these sort of fights. For Jagbeer, that time might be approaching with only 10 builds in his inventory. This is the moment where you have to make a quick decision. That's where you have to say, you know what, am I going to take this fight? Am I going to try and close out this player and, of course, get those materials from the elimination? Or do I have to disengage, try and just play with what I've got, try and farm up some materials later on? I think he's just stuck inside of 2 mines right now, trying to go for the wall, but he has to be very, very careful about how he goes about his business here, with only 8 builds in the locker, with players lurking nearby. Any move he makes, if it's a wrong one, it could be the end of his game, and there it is. Lots of other players now looking over. Grimes will be quite happy about that, because it means that he now has an opening with 18 builds in his inventory. Both of these players need this fight as much as the other. And Grimes is trying to get as much piece control as he can, but again, they're both playing it very, very similarly, very, very patiently here, Jacob.
Yeah, well, Grimes has some HP and a little bit more to work with. on the other side, Jagger has no medium ammo, and he's running out of shotgun ammo as well. So I feel like in his head, he almost feels forced to take this fight, get the refresh. Only had 11 bullets at one point or another, even less now that he tried to go ahead and get that piece control. Getting fought back, Grimes go ahead and takes it in the blink of an eye, and this is where Jagger is going to have to be creative, because the longer this fight goes, you see that zone pulled away, his chance of survival is getting slimmer and slimmer with each second that passes.
Look at this from Jagger. He only has 7 assault rifle bullets. That's his last build place as well. He's got to rely on the shotgun aim. How good is your shotgun aim, sir? I'm sure it's going to be top notch if he jumps straight into the box. And yeah, you can see just in the distance right there, Jagger does pick up the elimination, which does get him those materials, of course, as well. And that's Grimes. That's one of our top players from game number 1 down in game number 2.
Yep, and this is where those rest of the folks that were over towards Naughty Nets, Amir being one of them, rotating on over, using that as a little bit of a distraction. Instead of trying to beeline, be a part of the fight, they realize rotating is probably the better choice here. But as he finds some safety inside of Mega City, he sees the fight that he wants to take, and he's taking it tenfold. Shot after shot, he's going to land it, gets the elimination onto Vex, and then gets a nice little upgrade to his loadout as well.
Yeah, really great job from Amir right there. Just identified that he did have the upper hand, getting straight inside of the box, using the shotgun to break the builds and phasing through the stair. Just perfect Fortnite box fighting mechanics right there, right now. Also sitting inside of the Mega City area, trying to scavenge around, look for any sort of loot. It looks as though a lot of these players are sort of taking the combat SMGs when they do have their Storm Surge sorted out. For Amir, he's sticking with the assault rifle. And he's carrying that C4 as well, but no shield in his inventory, so if he does get tagged up like he does, he's not going to be able to heal back up very quickly at all, because he has to try and scavenge for more heals. And now, Jacob, he's running around without any shield. This is going to be rough.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that was a little bit of a caster curse, but I feel like you called it out yourself. And Amir right now, I feel like his rotation should probably be more towards a lot of these buildings, seeing if there's any shields that got left behind, anything that he could scavenge, because he needs it. One of the first times here today, we're seeing Storm Surge really playing a huge role in this fight. Z-Way just trying to figure out anybody he can put damage. 25 isn't a lot. It's almost one shot from almost any weapon in the game. But if nobody gives you the peak that you're looking for, that is where it's going to get difficult. And as Storm Surge does begin to tick in, that's when it's going to start to make nerves happen. And you're going to start to make those nerves moves. Something that you wouldn't typically do is now going to be something that you might be forced to do. He's trying to continue to fight for the piece control, trading shots, gets above the damage threshold, but takes a huge shot himself.
He does. He gets the Storm Surge, and now this is where we evaluate what are his motivations now. Is he going to continue this fight? He's got his Storm Surge. That's ticked off. Does he need the loot? Does he need the elimination? I would say no, but it looks as though he's trying to look inside and maybe make that decision up for himself. As Pickles just sat inside, has got some white heals as well. Not concerned by the Storm Surge whatsoever. Still trying to look for his first point of the tournament, but Way is looking to try and get inside and get involved. He does get looked at by another player, another team in the distance, and this is the danger of staying inside of these sort of areas, inside of the storm, and prolonging these fights, because not only could you fall victim to the player that's on you, but of course the teams and the players that are looking at you from a distance, that's going to be the main problem.
Yeah, this is going to be tough, because the longer they take, that 75, yeah, I can heal him up for now, but he still has a ton of travel to go before he is in the zone. I could see maybe people rotating over towards Steamy Springs. There are some geysers there that they can use for a little bit of rotation, especially if they don't have it already. So we'll see if any of those players really do make it out alive when we check in with them just a little bit later. Players that, you know, not facing the same dangers of being in zone but still got a journey to go is Contour. He has plenty of HP to work with here, but it's those shields that are lacking, much like a lot of the other players here in the lobby. He has the rocket ram, but he probably doesn't have that feeling of safety to try to use it, as the game number 1 victor is going up against Nasen here. And a little bit of a 1v1 towards the edge of zone. Neither player really having to rotate too far off from their original landing spot. You can almost hear what they're fighting for. It's that weapon cache that just holds so much valuable loot, an upgrade, the heals, everything that they need and more.
Yeah, that's why Blur Antics is quite more than happy to pot one of these big pots here for this 5 HP. He knows that if he is to claim this combat cache, then he's going to be able to get a plethora of heals coming out of that. He might even drop that big pot for the slurp juices, so I expect him to be prioritizing those slurp juices when it comes down to it, and yeah, he does. He takes those slurp juices, absolutely valuable heals, and because he's in zone here, he can just sit here. He doesn't actually have to move. He's got his Storm Surge from that little battle right there. If he does need it for later on, he's got some extra heals. Of course, he has the position. I like what he's doing here. He's actually making some pre-edits so the player can't build if they do decide to rotate on through here. Maybe.
That's smart.
Ah, he's setting up a trap. Look at this.
That's smart, because now they're probably going to think they're safe, think they're going to build. I'm interested if Nastin's going to go ahead and take that bait, because you see Blur is also rotating in that same direction where he'll always have line of sight on all that loot that is going to be left by. Nastin hasn't even made that a decision just yet. He's still checking out, getting the information of any of the other players rotating around him. Spots out at the very minimum one, but there is a couple of those players there. Blur, he's going to have to make this rotation towards the north sooner or later, but for now, he just wants to continue to keep eyes on his trap.
I like that. I like this strategy. There's just moments inside of Fortnite where you see a strategy coming through and you think, wow, how have I never thought to do that? Maybe I'm just a noob, but for Blur, he's thinking outside of the box by using elements of the box to maybe trap his opponent. I like the way he's playing this. Getting another cash as well, so he is the cash master right now. Maybe he's dropping those 6 splashes for even more slurp juices, setting himself up for a really, really nice game 2 after that successful game 1.
Yeah, and he immediately goes out wide yet again. He knows the zone is there, so he's just trying to see if anybody's hiding, hunkering down, trying to make a little bit of a sneak attack themselves. You can see where the zone is actually going, pushing a lot of these players towards the north, kind of centered up on the western side, including Rift Island as well. You got at least 3 players in that close proximity. They can either take a zip line or Rift themselves, and a bunch of players surrounded it. And I would say the player towards Rumbled Ruins is a little bit of a blessing there, because they don't have that line of sight all the way towards the top, but it's still going to be fruitful for anybody that wants those slurp juices to try to make it. And I think Amplify is going to be one of those first ones there, but he gets beamed on the way up, forced to drop all the way back down and try to heal himself up.
I almost think that the Rift Island being in the center of the zone almost makes it even more important for players to try and capture, because you just know it's going to be in the next zone. It's going to be appearing in some way or another. So I think that's why we're seeing a little bit more activity up here this game, because it just gives you that more prime position to being outside of the next zone, on edge, potentially, like we often so see it. So I'm excited to see who can actually end up claiming this this Rift Island, as we see 3 players battling out for it. And these are where these fights can go one of 2 ways. They can either finish very, very quickly, or they end in a stalemate and everyone's popping floppers trying to make their way into zone.
Yeah, interesting to just kind of let them contest it. If there was min-match objective points, I kind of see it. But with no mid-match objective points, it's kind of high risk, high reward. Noisy's just trying to break through, get some of these pieces underneath his control. Plasmafy doesn't want any of that noise. He just quickly goes, drops down to the low ground, refarming as much brick. You can see he's not very, very healthy when it comes to materials, and Noisy playing the daring role. Once again, pushing forward, try to get more of that real estate underneath his own control, backing down his opponent. Plasmafy is just getting stuck between a rock and a hard place, but the point for now is going to go on over. Stay contested just a little bit. Nobody really wanted to give it up, but 85 above the damage threshold. Plasmafy, if it continues to fall below, he's going to be forced to fight regardless.
And looking at where the Rift Island is in the zone again, you can sort of see why this fight is taking a little bit longer. Neither player needs to jump in, because the zone is not going to be pressuring them as of yet. So for Astro, Noisy just looking to claim this as much as he can. I think he's actually going to be successful in doing so. So we can see on the right side of the screen, and there it is, just about claiming that for himself. But no, a trap! C4 coming through from the other player on the other side. It was looking so fruitful for Astro, but it's just turned into a disaster.
You fell into my trap card. He flips it over, and it's just C4 placed everywhere. It caused a lot of destruction. Luckily for Noisy, he doesn't get nervous, doesn't make any anxious plays. He stays in his box, collects a majority of that loot regardless. Plasmafy is just trying to fight for a little bit of those scraps. He needed those minis, probably wanted that slurp juice, but that one gets denied. But Noisy's still holding on, still hot on those heels. And for Plasmafy, he's going to have to probably stay on this island a little bit and try to refarm as much as possible. He has to be careful, because he broke a lot of that brick that he could have possibly had moments ago. Noisy taking some shots into the distance. Since it was center zone Rift Island at one point or another, even though it's a little bit of a blessing because you can look along the island, gather all that information, but it does allow for a lot of these other players that maybe have some mountaintops to target you on top of the island when you're in the middle of a fight.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a target. A lot of players will be looking up at it. Everyone knows where it is on the map. Everyone knows who's going to be on it, and everyone knows when it's being claimed as well, so you know when there's activity on that island. Even if it's being contested, you can see on the map who's contesting it, or not who's contesting it, but whether it's being contested or not. But Amp2Fly looking to potentially fly into zone with the rocket ram. We'll have to wait and see. As they're just able to play on the edge of zone. 303 above the Storm Surge. Threshold looking pretty strong. This is one of those situations where it doesn't really need too much. The builds are not looking too strong, but everything else is looking pretty good. For Hyrax, trying to get inside the box, looking very, very aggressive right now, and for good reason, because the other player's weak, and the other player's no longer in the game. Is Wavy Kanji, who does drop down out of this game. That's Hyrax's first elimination of the game, and a fantastic one at that.
Yeah, even though you don't hear the Storm Surge actually doing damage to opponents when the shields crack, that's what you do here. Hyrax probably getting that audio cue and wanting to finish the job, realizing at worst, at most health that player could have is 100, and he just deals that damage rather quickly. Ends up continuing to try to rotate on. It's gonna be hard for some of these players to save resources and get towards the center of the zone. That's why you see a lot of them positioned on towards the outskirts, continuously zone after zone. They don't want to make the wrong move, so as long as they're in the zone, they feel that's enough safety for them. But everybody on this eastern side, even some on the north, going to have a far pull, a long rotate to go if they want to try to find any bit of safety over towards Eclipse Estate. And you got to imagine, I wonder if some of those NPCs are still over there, how annoying they're going to be from anybody trying to rotate in. But as I finally noticed Fungus's loadout, that is all gold all the way. Four slurp juices, and somehow Drew hits the slip and slide, gets into the box with Omizi, takes him down to 75 HP, and finally takes him out. That was a great play, and I hope to see it on replay after the game.
Yeah, I think he was using the mud there to get straight inside of the box. That was a fantastic play indeed. That's what we like to see. That's what Solos is all about, because if you're down bad, if you need a refresh, that is how to do it. Elxie, though, looking in that very same position. 20
Blur
builds, 0 heals. Blur went down in the feed. Our game 1 winner's out, Jacob.
Yeah, that opens up the door. This is literally following the trend of what we were watching yesterday on a whole different game mode. And that's why I keep saying consistency is key. And this time around, with Blur and a couple of those guys towards the south having to rotate, it's not as easy of a game as it was last time. Slippy Drew staying true to his name. He was the one who kind of slipped into that box. Heals being found literally at the last second, and now he has almost no choice but to try to use that rocket ram and get out alive, but he's trying to save the slap splashes until the very last second. Time get almost right, but this is where I feel like it's one of those situations. You rocket ram out, you do what you can, otherwise you go down to the zone. Lands a shot onto Piggle at the very end, taking at least 75 shield off, and that's one of those things Piggle's probably thinking, why me? You were down anyway, why did you have to do it?
He was eyeing up that shield mushroom, the shield flower just in front of him, and Piggle just snatched it right away from him. That was his end of the game. For Pickle, though, flying his way in, making sure he can make the way in as effectively as possible, as efficiently as possible for Fago. Actually picked up a nice little refresh inside of the Storm right here. Med Miss is going to be enough to sustain for a little bit longer, but it's not going to be too long enough as he tries to get inside of this player's box. Hops inside, sprays through the box. Can he get the elimination? He can. I was not expecting that at all. There's some splashes there. Can he sustain himself in Storm? It is now a 5-tick. He's fumbling in his loot and fumbling back to the lobby, unfortunately. But a good effort, a valiant effort. Picks up an elimination in the process.
Yeah, that was a great try from him. And unfortunately, just like you said, just fumbling, tumbling, maybe a little less popcorn before the game, and he probably would have got that slap splash off, but it's either here nor there, because you got to give him a great effort. He's gathering some points. He's kind of building up the confidence, getting more and more aggressive of each game as we finally jump back on board. Yasir, he's the one that's really making use of those Crash Pad Juniors. The only question I have is, does he have that augment to combine them both for almost a perfect rotational tool? Because that'll definitely come in handy here to go ahead and cover the distance, not really having to go through the water. Nope, this time he doesn't have the augment, but he's still trying to make the rotation nonetheless. Revive's following suit, choosing to go against the rocket ram because he has that roaming redeploy for his glider. He's able to cover a lot of distance rather quickly. And he's just trying to go from point A to point B before he thinks about using that rocket ram here to travel the rest of the way there.
Yeah, the rocket ram's going to be absolutely vital. We saw him going down up on high ground last game, but he has his eyes set on Yasir. Tries to go straight inside the box, but is unsuccessful in doing so. Still has a little bit of a ways to go, but he's not going to do it without a fight, and there it is. Takes out Vase. None of them Vase going down. Picks himself up one of those slurp juices as well, and now he's got some star-studded loot. Nearly max mats going into endgame. Yeah,
Vase, one of the more prominent names when it comes to these PlayStation Cups and console cups in general. Not having the best day, but he still has more than enough time to have a couple pop-off performances and really make up for it. Side by side, Revised and Yasir, two of the heavy hitters late in this lobby as Revise has 3 eliminations so far, still has a slurp. Yasir, only a med mist on the other side, so probably trying to gather information, figure out, hey, where can I get a refresh from? Because not only does he lack the heals, you can see he only has 6 builds as well.
Finally, for some of these players, the zone pulls in a favorable position. It pulls back towards the congested side. We seem to have had so many max pull zones for a lot of these players on the southeast side, and now finally it pulls back towards that east side for CR. Such an aggressive player he's turning out to be in this final, not letting up at all. He had a huge elimination game in game number 1, now sitting at 3 already.
Yeah, halfway there, he had 6, is what you're referring to there in game 1. He was in 2nd place overall with 34 points, even though he didn't finish 2nd place in that game. So he's finding that balance between eliminations and placement points towards the very end. Starting this game, Revise was in 9th place. He's trying to pick up the pace overall, continue to have some consistent performances, but you can see he's just being very, very careful, peeking through the cone, going right back into his box, trying to find safety in his own position. Still looking around. CR, with that little bit of elevation, really could make the difference, but you can kind of see what he's planning. He's planning that cone rotate that you're seeing a lot of these players really utilize here in this solo competition.
I like what he's done. I think he's pre-popped the slurp juice as well, so if he does get tagged up in this rotation, it won't be too much of a problem. And wow, he just sort of found himself a little bit of loot right there. He'll take that combat SMG, actually drops the assault rifle in favor of the combat SMG right now, but still has a spare slot as well, so he could have taken both, but opts for the SMG instead. Revise now sat inside of this mid-ground position, not up on the high ground like we saw him in the last game, which of course ended how we remember, not in a very successful way for him. He's just trying to play a little bit lower and ensure that he doesn't get chopped out like last time. It's looking good though. The zone's pulling in his favor. The materials are still looking good. Tries to go for a little bit of a fight as well. I think Revise is one of those players that will try and go for those refreshes. He's not afraid to get a refresh before he absolutely needs it. He's one of those players that can do it proactively.
Yeah, a lot of these guys have played against some of the best players in Fortnite history, so they have a lot of experience underneath their belt in very many different game modes and situations. As you see here, playing patient as can be. Somebody goes down right on the other side. That is CR. That was our 2nd place player. And with Blur and CR going down, the top of the leaderboard is wide open for the taking. You see here just trying to make that decision. What do I want to grab? And you see him dropping those crash pad juniors for the rocket ram late in the game. But with a lot of players using that rocket ram and some water where you can crash into, I do think it's a little bit more viable than we saw yesterday.
Yeah, what's not viable right now for Notorious is builds. He hasn't got any. Yasir actually going the same. He only has 6 builds to his name, trying to go to the front side of zone, and this is always an absolute mess when it comes to these rocket rams. Everyone is rocket ramming at the same time, and this is where it gets a little bit messy as well, as Yasir actually falls victim to someone else's rocket ram, which sends him into a frenzy, and unfortunately sends him back to the lobby.
Yeah, he gets tossed by one guy, taken down by the next. Just getting displaced by that rocket ram, and that's one of the dangers. Sometimes it's not even the actual damage that it does, but it's how it bumps you around, tosses you around the lobby. When I've seen some players go down to the fall damage when they're on the high ground, so they have to be able to be careful. Faith does have a very, very desirable loadout, but unfortunately he used the last of the slurp juices, so he's going to be looking for some sort of refresh for the heals, but maybe bide his time until then. Rihan just trying to go towards the high ground, crashes down onto one, steals away the position even though he didn't get the elimination.
Rihan would have got some materials from that as well, so we could be seeing Rihan going for the refresh and going for the high ground. Faith actually in the process of trying to rotate to the front side of zone does crack another one of the opponents. Doesn't quite find the full elimination though, but looking on the front side of zone, this is where things get a little bit dangerous because so many players are going to be crashing straight onto them. And wow, no, he does actually get the elimination right there at the end. Fantastic job from them. Fungus is the one that they take out, but Stacks on 3 HP. Backside of zone, this is not looking too good for him. Can he find this? Not actually on the backside. It looks as though he's actually just on the front side. So he's actually looking in a decent enough position. He's trying to find a refresh as quickly as possible, though, with only 9 builds now, 4 to his name. Trying to sustain for as long as possible now inside of the top 10.
Yeah, tried to reposition. He heard that breach or doing some damage onto his builds, and this is where he's going to go down trying, let me tell you, break down that high ground, not really give people a chance to shoot him down, goes towards the front side of the zone rather quickly, and there's not too many players there as of now, so that was a safe rotate, or as safe as can be, but now he's fresh out of the builds. He's stuck scrambling, running around, trying to find any nook and cranny so that he can call it home, but it's sooner or later, that zone is going to push him out. There is a player right next to him. That's Dash or Rooney. Shot's going to be fired. Dash now takes notice. Both of them very, very weak, and there goes a finish coming out from Stacks on the bottom 5, but ends up in the zone nonetheless, and in blink of an eye, we go from 10 to 2 players with Excerpt being against Chubbs here at the end.
Chubbs is the only one in zone, though. Exert trying to use the heals to get himself in there. Can he actually use the rocket ramp to shockwave him into the storm? He can. Shocks him right into the storm. It's Expert with an expert play. Chubbs had no idea that was going to happen. And when all was looking good for Chubbs, he was inside of the zone. He had the materials. He was winning until Expert decided, you know what? I'm just going to send him in the storm.
He had the breacher. All he needed to hit was that one well-placed shot as the rocket ramp came barreling at him. And I said it, Minnie, it's not just the damage you have to watch out for. It tossed him right out of the zone in a well-placed sharp tooth. The zone did the rest. He steals away the game. I truly believe he stole that one away, which is huge in this type of competition.
He really can. He really did. I mean, that is what the rocket ramp can do. You mentioned it. The knockback feature of it is so prominent. And as we get to relive some of the moments from game number 1, I am so shocked that he managed to come out with a victory right there. But, of course, plenty of action in the mid-game as well.
Yeah, and you can kind of see some of these highlight plays, some above the threshold, some below the threshold. Aoxy with his back up against the wall. He needed to make a play like this. Fumbled around. He ended up going down. Revised as well. A lot of great plays going in towards the mid-game where the start of the end game began, but it's this right here. This is the play that takes it all. Tosses him towards the back. He has 76 health. Just one shot with that breacher likely would have taken him down, but he just misses out on that opportunity, and Exert just takes advantage of it overall. 36 points with 3 eliminations to take the game.
Just a shift in emotion for Chubbs right there, knowing that the opponent is inside of the storm, knowing that they're just healing off. You know that you're going to be able to sustain, and then quickly, as a flash, the tides turn, the tables turn, and that is how things end after game number 2. Wow, what a game it was. We scroll through our leaderboard or our standings from just game 2 itself. So we don't have the overall leaderboard right here. This is just the game 2 standings, but it was a crazy game. We saw some crazy action, and again, our game number 1 winner actually falling down a little bit earlier than they would have liked.
Yeah, and you're kind of seeing that even though they made it place, 74th from Rappy in the lobby, he was able to get 5 points thanks to those eliminations. So if you are going to go down early, find your back up against the wall, you have to go down swinging. You have to be able to take some of these players down with you. Not only does it stop their progression, but it gives you at least a couple of points so then you don't go out of that lobby, out of that game with 0.
Yeah, I mean, game number 2 did not disappoint at all. Before we do get into game number 3, we will be hopping straight into a short break, but please don't go anywhere. The action will continue.
PlayStation.
Welcome back to the Fortnite PlayStation Cup NA Build Finals. I mean, Jacob, I think I'm still shaking. I think I'm still speechless after what we just saw in game number 2. I mean, sum it up for me so far, how things are going, because, I mean, it's just been crazy.
I mean, to me, it's just the opportunist world here in this solo competition. For the players, you see them getting a high number of eliminations, but they're not the ones really making it too far in these tournaments. It's the ones that are just taking opportunity as they arise, the ones that have shown the most flexibility and the overall ability to adapt in this competition, which is huge. Like the excerpt in that last game, adapted on the fly, using that rocket ramp, getting towards the top, pushing Chubbs back into the zone, and then taking him out overall to steal away that game when Chubbs looked like he was honestly in complete control.
Yeah, and that's what Solos is all about. Things can happen. Things that we don't expect to happen can happen. And wow, that was a crazy endgame. The action will continue, though, of course. If you have just joined us, we have 6 games of Fortnite build action for you. We've already had 2 games. If you did miss them, then you missed out on a lot of fun, a lot of action, a lot of cool stuff went down. But don't worry, we've still got 4 more games. And of course, speaking of which, game number 3 is just about ready. The players are getting their tickets for the battle bus and taking their seats as we prepare to jump straight into the game. Expectations going into this game, Jacob? Are we expecting any changes? Is there anyone that you expect to do better? Anyone that you expect to sort of hold out on the top? Or are we expecting some more of the same?
I mean, considering this is the last game before the half, I would hope players aren't making too many changes. You want to stick to your game plan as long as possible. Maybe ask me again after this game as we end into the second half of the tournament, game 4, 5, and 6. But as of now, it's not too big of a point gap. 47 points for first place, all the way down to, if you kind of look at 50th place, is 8 points. And you could have one pop-off game, and that puts you in the conversation as a possible player to take it all at the end of the day. So in my opinion, don't change up too much. Wait it out, play it out. You practiced up until this point and see what that gets you.
Yeah, 100%. Stick to your guns for now. Go into plan B, plan C, maybe plan D later on down the line. But for Chubbs, a player that you have to think should have closed out that last game with a victory if it wasn't for Experts. Fantastic, ingenious play at the end. But a solid game, a solid start, if you like, to their tournament, because of course, sitting on 27 points, they would have got a lot, if not all of those points from that very last game.
Expert 45, he moved up into second place, and he wins the tiebreaker due to his victory royale because Zoth is in 45-point range as well, but he's going to go ahead and take third place. Revi's landing on over towards the racetrack. We've seen a lot of success in the racetrack's history. Doesn't matter the mode, so if you can kind of give yourself a good start, you get nice metal. There's a lot of brick around. All the materials you can get and more. Only question is the loot. So if you don't get the loot from the actual racetrack, hopefully you have a path ready to go, so that way you can get all the loot that you need.
Yeah, for sure. Backup plans are very important. So for Revi's, there's actually a little area down here to the southeast that you can actually use to loot up a little bit. Blur antics. 9 C4. Okay, he's dropped a little bit. I was going to say, if he's taken that into the mid-game fights here, that would have been pretty explosive. But I like what he's doing. Doing as I expect him to, just sort of dip inside of this area where so many players are actually fighting. And I think it's a smart play until that happens, because they're definitely going to look back. If you shoot at them, you have to expect some return fire, and that is exactly what happens to him.
Yeah, he shoots at him. The guy on the other side is, oh yeah, hold my slurp. I got this. Let me get some early surge. Blur, he has a little bit of a, I wouldn't say unorthodox game plan, but he goes for a lot of those chests. We saw him where he landed in that last game. There's 2 possible chests there with the heist bag. Where he's going now, there's 4 more chests in this area. If they all do spawn, he continues to move towards the east. There's 3 more chests there. So he's kind of taking what some would say is a little bit of a split drop and really making use of it. Even though he was in first place at one point or another, he's moved down to 4th place, but he's still in that conversation. Less than 10 points separate him and first place overall.
Yeah, definitely. That's what Solis is all about, isn't it? One game can make all the difference. If you can have a big pop-off game, we saw Blur do it in game number 1. Of course, Expert coming out with a dub in game 2. It can shift things so quickly. So for those players like Pickle, who are a little bit low down the leaderboard, only picked up 5 points so far. It's not over until it is over, and the turret right there actually proving to be a little bit of a problem, but evading the attention of that for now. And a lot of players do sort of converge on this bridge area. It's a plentiful supply of metal from all of those fences. But for worst aim right here, this guy's looking pretty solid with the loot. Again, some gold loot.
Yep, this is where we saw Tryhard yesterday really get a lot of his early loot. Talked about the drop when you make it a part of the game plan overall. It's pretty easy to get a lot of different chests and set yourself up. It's up to the RNG after that, depending on loot you get out of the actual chest. but you know, there's still more for him to grab. About, I want to say 4 or 5 in chest in that area, and this is that fight over towards Naughty Nets. I thought it was going to happen very, very early on in that last game, but instead it's Fago who goes down early. We saw him make some noise in that last game, but unfortunately he gets quieted down here early on.
Yeah, this is the danger of being highly contested at a drop spot where things can boil over very, very quickly. Naughty Nets, of course. You're on an island, you're isolated. There's very little chance that someone else is going to come in and save the day. But for Blur, he's on the receiving end of some fight. It's On1 who's actually getting onto his wall, trying to get inside the box. Does so successfully, does so again as Blur Antics replies with a great shot, fantastic shot onto On1. Now he's on the aggressive. There's another team, a third party that saves the day for Blur Antics. It looks as though Aoxy it is that's actually trying to aggress onto On1. On1 looking so aggressive now, not looking so strong as he falls back to the lobby. Blur, though, has got another player to deal with. He thought it was a 1v1. It was a 1v2 almost situation because now he's got to fight another player that's decided to turn up.
Yeah, but at least he went down, grabbed all of On1's loot, and these are 3 heavy hitters when it comes to Fortnite in general. Doesn't matter what the scoreboard is, they all have the chance and the ability to pop off at any moment. Aoxy gets the rest of the scrap. C4 coming down from Blur, trying to cause construction, displace his opponent. Aoxy looking like he was going to threat to build up just a little bit. Blur Antic tries to beat him to the punch, and it does even look like he's just trying to disengage. The longer this fight goes, a lot of those teams from Relentless Retreat will begin to rotate in that direction. But even though Blur and Aoxy have each other's locked in their line of sight, it's like third player slowly but surely trying to follow up and third party this whole thing.
Yeah, definitely. Sanguine Sweets. A very fruitful drop spot. I believe it's got around 80 chests, 82 potential chest spawns around that figure, so a huge amount of loot to go around. And for Kicha right now, they're actually making the most of that Aoxy. We saw him getting very, very aggressive against Blur Antics. Still on the 1 elimination, so you have to think that he hasn't actually been able to take him out yet. As yet there is another player that's got involved. What was a 1v1 is now 1v1, v1, 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 it seems.
Just goes to show that everything could change in a moment's notice. Evo, seen him in a few finals lobbies before. Glad to see him back here in the PlayStation Cup finals. Aoxy's just kind of waiting, being patient, trying to figure out when is the perfect opportunity to try to pop out and strike. Evo shoots off into the distance. So even though Aoxy didn't get that information, knowing that the person he was hunting down shot into the distance goes to show that maybe there's another player in the proximity. Pump versus Yagvir. Pump trying to make up for lost time here. A couple games that didn't go his way, but as long as he has that mental composure, it's not out of reach just yet. This is the last game before the half. And where your position here really matters so much because you kind of lose control of your game plan the farther down you are on the leaderboard in that second half, particularly more in games 5, in game 6. You might be forced to play so aggressive to try to get those elimination points with those placement points to try to make up for any lost time here. Pump quickly disengaging on out. He realized, hey, the forecast tower is still up. Maybe that's something I can go ahead and rotate toward. But he sees Cam in the sky using that rocket ram. I think luckily for Cam, all he had was a combat SMG because that damage could have been a heck of a lot worse.
Definitely could have, and it looks as though the forecast towers have presented themselves. One of our players has claimed it, so either Expo, I believe, down there, or Fungus was one of those players that do now have the insight into where the next zone is going to appear. Yasir just arriving a little bit too late to actually claim that, but maybe he'll want to try and trade for some Storm Surge over here, try and maybe get some damage early on if he needs to. The Brightener, though, rotating on the other side of the map completely, in between 2 players, and this is an awkward one. Way is all the way over the other side. There's another player to his left as well, so he's almost rotating right in between an awkward sandwich, and this is not the position he wants to be in, particularly with the storm closing in. Wants to try and get to that geyser, I think, to actually rotate in and fly up in the sky. He's just having to wait a little bit longer than he would have wanted. He does, of course, have the med miss, so he can sustain himself a little bit longer in storm. He doesn't have to use those splashes if he doesn't want to, which I'm sure is the goal here. You can see the way on the bottom right corner of the screen, the little triangle looking back. Always keeping tabs on Brightener, as he's just sat here enjoying the time in the storm because he knows he can survive.
He's probably eating some snacks right now. He said, hey, I gotta wait anyway. Might as well make use of the time. Maybe get a drink of water, rehydrate, refuel. He knows this rotation isn't gonna be easy on his energy. Spots out a med kit as well in the distance, so he can be pretty useful on that med miss. Pick up the med kit shortly after if he wants. Expert not having what looks like the time of his life here. Having to regenerate some of those shields, probably trading shots between him and Omizi. That way they don't have to worry about Storm Surge, which what we saw in that last game forced a couple more interactions than we saw in previous games so far. Almost was the literal demise of at least one player to go down. So you got to make sure, even if you're not high and well above the Storm Surge threshold, that you at least have something in your pocket so when it does activate, you're not starting from scratch.
Yeah, we often see that. Game number one always gets off to quite a crazy start as players try to figure out where people are going, and then once you know where everyone is, you know how the lobby's going to operate. Because of course, every set lobby is different. It's very rare that we get the exact same players playing in the in each set lobby. So every lobby is different. This is why we're seeing different fights, different engagements happening all over the map. For Zell, they're actually trying to fight over this cash right now. Looking at their loadout, they actually do need it, particularly when it comes to the heals. Only 5 minis is not going to be enough. That's why they're getting very aggressive inside of the box, trying to escape as much as they can, though, because of course they're in their domain. They don't have the edits on the other player. It's Yagvir actually who is on the other side, and they're both fighting over this cash, and the cash seems to be in a little bit of a no man's land right now. Nobody owns that position, so who's going to actually take the charge and jump into the box, take the elimination? It's Yagvir that does actually have the edit on that wall. So for Zell, he has to get a little bit further back, create some space, and it looks as though he's creating a lot of space by disengaging and running away.
Yeah, he realized that he lost a lot of that space, and his opponent wasn't scared to get aggressive for that loot. Quickly disengage, almost runs into another player who's playing a little bit sneaky, but maybe he's playing a game. Ring around the Rosie. Here's the cash open up. Tries to return on back because, in theory, Yagvir has to leave something behind. He can't carry all that loot with him to the end game, so some sort of scraps will be left there, and that's just basically up to Yagvir. Of course, he's going to grab the slurp, but anything after that is going to be bonus. Anything left behind is what they're going to be hoping for there on the other end. Stacks becomes the focus. Multiplayers in the lobby see him trying to rotate to safety and make him a target, get him to expend a lot of that metal. Doesn't even give him a chance to pop his minis just yet. Finally, they're going to go through, but I think a lot of the resources are being expended. And for Stacks, he can't just switch to that wood, because as soon as he switched that wood, I feel like that antagonizes his opponent, saying maybe he's out of builds, maybe he's weak and low on resources, so it's time to finish the job.
Yeah, this is an awkward area of the map. There is Creaky Compound, but yeah, there we go. He's found it. He's got his cash. He's able to actually invest that metal, because of course you do get a decent amount of metal from those caches, so he can actually do that. Create himself a little tunnel, a little rotation potentially if he does need to make it. I really like that play. It's blur antics on the right side of the screen. Still carrying on to those C4s, so maybe we'll see that being used later on. It looks as though he's just trying to find a player to tag up. Maybe he's a little bit wary of the Storm Surge. We saw him trading a little bit earlier on for some Storm Surge down towards the southwest of the map. Looks as though he's trying to do so again, get some assault rifle tags. Not quite connecting though. Stacks in the complete other situation. He's quite happy just to chill inside of the box, look around, scope things out, see what's going on as he waits for the next zone to reveal itself.
Look at that smart play by Blur. He throws those big pots in the direction in which he's going to rotate to. That way, if he does take damage, he's quickly going to be able to box up on those, reuse them. Zell still fighting up against Yagvir on the other side. At least Zell was able to get a slurp juice for his effort so far. So at least he's not leaving with nothing. And then a double slots taken up by minis. Something is better than nothing, better than kind of leaving it empty, would you say? And now he has the chance with a med miss there. He could trade one of those out. And then he has a little bit of everything. He has the slurps, he has the minis, he has the med miss. And it's just interesting decision, though. He's not using any of the slurps to recover that 50 HP. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Or maybe he has something else planned?
I agree. I think because you're in this biome, you know there's going to be some slurp flowers, and as I say that, there's a little slurp flower right there for him. There's two, actually, so he's able to heal himself back up. So I think a lot of it is situational, right? If you're in this sort of jungle biome, you know there's going to be those that can respawn, of course, every 15 seconds or regenerate. Then you can actually heal your way up. You don't need to invest that slurp juice. But in some situations, you're on the back foot, you're in a fight, you actually just have to, just in case you do go down, as we see the Rift Island appearing on the map. One of our players is already going up there to try and claim it. And it's looking like it's not quite as contested as we've seen before. It's Omizi who does go up for it. Hopefully he can find some success.
Yeah. In the center yet again, though, so it's going to give a A lot of possibilities for Omizi, and you see him building that real estate, using a lot of the brick, re-farming it, so that way the potential for anybody to contest him on top of this island, they're going to have to be able to work for every little piece of real estate there as Omizi just continues to building it. And I like this play coming out from him, especially now that he's actually not going to be contested, but at least it gives him something to work with. It's more of that potential. You'd rather have it and not use it than need it and not have it.
Yeah, definitely. One of those situations for Omizi right now. Got the high ground again inside of the safe zone. Dash looks as though he's trying to make a dash for the island. I think it's a little bit too late to claim the center, as Omizi has already done so. There is, of course, a vault underneath that Dash might be looking at. A lot of players actually just go up to this Rift Island because it has so much quick farmable brick. So a lot of players might just rift up here, quickly farm up their brick because they know it's going to be there every single game, and then hop right on down. Whoa. So maybe we'll see Dash do that. And look at that for a base. That's Chapter 1-esque base right there. I'm expecting there to be some sort of a sky base going on in a sec. Who knows? I highly doubt it, though.
A porta fortress from the old school days.
Beefy.
Just making sure that he has just a lot of space to kind of look around the lobby, and then he kind of owns that launch pad towards the bottom half of that entire structure. So he's making sure that he has an escape route. He has a whole plan set out, ready to go if a moment notice. And this is kind of what you talked about, the vault underneath, recycling a lot of the brick. Besides the capture point itself, there's a ton on top of Rift Island worth fighting for. Bully Slayer on the other side. Kind of door to door, window to window with Dash and Rooney, both of them trying to play a game of peekaboo to land the perfect shot. But I think both of them realizes it's not worth it to go all in just yet. As Dash just kind of goes around back, he's trying to see what loot is left behind for him. What can I take, bring with me in towards the end game? Does find the remainder of those slap splashes, so at least something for Dash to work with.
Perfect timing as well for Dash, because as he goes for the center, Omizi spots out the other player that's trying to leave, and then his attention is diverted over to there, and Dash can quickly escape. But now unscathed, if he does, of course, use that launch pad, things could be a little bit different, but I like the plays right now, just playing on edge. He seems to be playing quite... you know, I was going to say, if he's just running out in the open, boxing up might be a better idea, particularly when you have so much spare brick there. I thought he was going to be a little bit too complacent when his positioning, knowing that Omizi was up there. But this is what we see from players on the island, you know, sitting up on here, using the high ground position to take some tags. You know, it's such a valuable position to be in. So for Dash, Omizi, they're both quite happy that each other are not fighting each other. That's absolutely fine. It's absolutely normal. We expect to see it because players will just prioritize their own game, prioritize their own search.
Yeah, it doesn't happen 100% of the time, though, but a little fun fact is that this zone going into the next is typically when the zone will move away from that Rift Island. So if a lot of players caught onto that trend, it's not 100%. Like I said, there are some zones where it goes and keeps the island in, but if they're kind of ready for that trend, they know it's going to go towards the west. But is it going to go to the northwest, the southwest? Those are the decisions these players are going to have to make. And if you're on top of that Rift Island, you have time because you have the launch pad, and you can also make it a little bit of a short pad, put that cone, put that ramp above, so you're not going as fly and high in the sky as usual. So it gives you something else to work with. Speaking about not being outside of the zone, over here towards Shiesty, he still has a little bit of distance to cover before he pros past Brutal Bastion. He's already used at least one Slurp Juice as well. You don't want to have to use the second Slurp Juice just to get in the zone at this point in time, or else you're going to be stuck. A lot of these other players will try to hold you out, especially the ones that are positioned on top of Brutal.
This is where for Weasel right here, he has to think, the investment of a Slurp Juice, could it be worth it to actually get all my materials up here? I think I saw he had about 100 brick. There's so much quick farmable brick inside of this sort of snowy area. I think he might just sit inside of the storm, invest that Slurp Juice in getting materials, and you have to think about, you know, am I going to be able to get bills later on? Probably not. Am I going to be able to go for those refreshes? Probably not. I think it's worth to invest a Slurp Juice right there, but the expert looking pretty good on the storm surge. It looks like the other player on the other side might not be, so he's trying to use this to his advantage. It's another player that's trying to get aggressive. It's Team Matt. You can see his health dwindling. That's not a mistake. That's not a glitch. That's the Storm Surge just ticking his health.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't let his shields crack, I think he's going to be in a good spot. Or at least as good of a spot you can be as you're down on Storm Surge. Expert just playing patient. He realized with Storm Surge active, there's going to be a lot of players trying to find those cheeky shots. Piggle's going to find one in the feed, taking down Sin. Another lot of players trying to rotate on around, a little bit towards the south of Expert. even though we move all the way towards the western side of the map yet again. Expert picking up those crash pad juniors instead of the big bush bomb. I think that's going to be the right play for him. Gives him a little bit more ability to work with, and depending on what augments he has, it makes it that much more as he goes and tries to rotate towards that Rift Island. Probably going to use any of those rifts that were left over, or maybe even go up to the island and try to use that launch pad to try to get to the zone as quick as possible.
Yeah, definitely. Couple of options. He's got 4 floppers, so his options are plentiful. He only has 122 damage above the Storm Surge, though, so he's going to have to think about getting in sooner rather than later. There's a rift right there, nicely placed for him. This is the danger. He's going to be flying through the sky. When Storm Surge is active, so many people will be looking for tags. Is he going to get tagged up as he's rotating in? We'll have to wait and see. CR getting aggressive again, which is not the position we're used to seeing him in. We've seen him with high eliminations before. None in this game so far. Really struggling on the rotation. Look at that on the bottom right of the screen. So many players on the south side of the zone. Luckily for all of them, it does pull back towards that side, but this is a really, really difficult rotation, especially when there's a player trying to jump in your box as well. For CR, he really has to make a move here, otherwise he could get caught out. Yeah,
going into this game, he was in first place position by 2 points. Obviously, eliminations up until this point can really jump around that leaderboard in terms of who's where. But as long as he's able to stay consistent, he's gotten the top 3. He's definitely gotten a top position so far. He's gotten at least 9 eliminations through the course of the 3 games up until this point. It's just looking a little worrisome here as the zone is beginning to pull away. He doesn't have any HP to regain, so a refresh, something like that, is going to be a must as he's getting tagged up and shot up from all directions, fresh out of builds, forced to drop down low, trying to find anything to work with, a nook, a candy, a crevice, but he continues to be the target of multiple players here, and as he finally drops down towards the low ground, he goes down altogether. That's Evo who finishes that job, but we know that he was a Chambo, so Evo didn't get much for that.
Yeah, not much, but it's an elimination. It's points on the board for Piggle on the left side of the screen again, using the nice little phasing technique to actually rotate a little bit more cleanly, a little bit more safely, but I say safe for him, not safe for anyone else that's in his path, as he wrecks through a bunch of the builds that are in his way. You can see all the fights going on the drone on the right side of the screen. So much action as players try to rotate in. So many players that are prioritizing their rotation. So many players that are also looking to try and box fight, to try and pick themselves up a little bit of a refresh. As scoping on the left side, we see 123 above the Storm Surge. He's looking pretty solid right now inside of that zone, I believe, as well. So he's looking pretty strong as he's trying to hold all those other players that are rotating on it. And he's trying to place a big brick wall that says, do not enter, I am here.
Yeah, this is going to be big for Scoffing an opportunity, starting at about, I think, like 20th place or so, maybe a little bit outside of the 20th place, 25th overall. He just has to be able to hold on to his position. Looking healthy as well, as you see here. Spots an enemy back towards the outside of zone. That's Swexy, tries to make him a target. Continues to put that pressure down with the combat SMG, trying to, at least at the very minimum, force him to expend a lot of the resources and builds. Pulls out the C4 as well, trying to have everything come crashing down. He drops down at least 1 layer, but out of the line of sight for Yasir, so he's not going to be able to finish the job there. But 40 points so far, 2 eliminations. He's gotten the ball rolling, looking healthy in terms of materials. Yasir has been consistent through the past 2 games and looking to make it 3 in a row.
Yeah, let's hope so for him. Looks like he's pulled zone as well in his sort of area, so that's really, really beneficial for him. It's definitely going to be a value for him. He can try to hold everyone else that's coming through. Grimes we see on the left side of the screen as well. We go back with Yasir. He's just trying to claim this side of the zone. He's going to be very, very careful of all those rocket rams that are going to be coming in, because he has to keep an eye out. Luckily, he's in fully built metal at the moment, which the rocket rams cannot break through as of right now. So he is safe and sound, in a good position as we see all those rocket rams coming through. We see all the players on the right side of the screen flying up into the sky, trying to make it into the zone as quickly and efficiently as possible. It stacks on the left side. We see him trying to make a rotation. Really, really good loot. Really, really good heals as well. I expect him to make it far because he still has plenty of materials as well, as he does get almost looked at on that rotation. Will the ice be the option for him? Will he have to slide around to get into the next zone? He tries to get inside of a box, get looked at by so many players as well. He has to be very, very careful with how he approaches this, because he could become the target of a refresh.
Yeah, but luckily for him, not only has those slurp juices, but the exotic slap splashes as well. Just 2. That's all he needs is 2 out of the 6 that he has. That'll get him up to 200 effective shield and HP, but he knows multiple players are waiting around every one of these corners as he finally figures out a second here to stabilize himself, rethink his strategy going into the next rotation. at least a good majority of the zone has pulled it on their side of the map. So that means it's going to be tough. Everybody's going to have to rotate together. And if somebody kind of slips up on those fundamentals, they are going to be receiving a whole lot of hurt.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Fundamentals, end game, applying previous knowledge to how you're going to approach each end game. But each game is different. So for Yasir right now, he's trying to look at how to approach this fight. And that's the danger. That is the difficulty with all these rocket rounds being in the game, because you can get shot out the way right now, all the way up in the sky. Has got just a slither of shield, but he's going to use it to his advantage. I think he's able to pop down and pop those minis. Looking pretty strong on the front side as well, but he has to be careful again. And that is why so many players will be looking to claim that same position and wreck through so many builds on the front side of the zone. You can see them flying, soaring through the sky on the right side of the screen as Way now has to build his way in and use the old-fashioned method, running in with legs.
You can see everybody kind of waiting to this portion of the game, the moving zones, to really utilize those rocket rounds, because they realize as everybody else is rotating, that doesn't leave a ton of time for them to kind of focus up and make them a target. Yasir's just trying to hold on as much of the high ground as possible. You see all that madness that is on the low ground, but he gets tossed and displayed. Luckily for the Crash Pad Jr., he doesn't take fall damage, but he goes down altogether. Kontar's going to be the one to take him out. Scoffing goes down as well. Staxaruni still finding a way to show some consistency, even though he did use his last slurp juice that made sure that he's going to rotate and not take too much damage along the way. Z-Way's doing the same thing, but he almost runs out of resources, just the bare minimum left, so he's forced to use that rocket ramp to continue his rotation.
Yeah, a little bit of a panic rocket ram right there. He realized that he had no builds in his way. And look at this, going for the high ground play, going to the front side of zone. Only a limited amount of materials, though, so he has to make this med miss count. He has to make sure that he can actually ensure that he can continue this domination in this end game. For Chubbs, though, we saw him lose out in game number 2. Can he come out on top in this particular game? Gets a beautiful elimination right there onto Hyrax. 42 builds for him. He's looking pretty good. He's looking pretty sustained as Grimes decides to chop out the whole of the high ground, goes straight onto the front side of zone, claims that wall. Can he get the shot off? No, he doesn't want to. 7 builds to his name on the front side of zone, does go for the shot, but gets met with a rocket ram to the face.
Yeah, immediately gets taken down by Grims. Into the top 7 we go. This is where a lot of those placement points for your efforts start to click in. Even if you get a top 2, that's at least something. Kontar gets taken out. Staxaruni still on a roll. 5 eliminations so far. Becomes the target of the high ground. That's Expo for now, but Stax is ready for the challenge. Pulls out the rocket ram, letting everything hang loose. Even some fall damage going down, but what goes up must come down as well. Stax landing another direct hit. Expo becomes the target towards the outside, and Stax single-handedly not only stole away the high ground, but takes him out as well.
He's only got 5 builds, so he's going to be very careful. No heals to heal himself back up. He gets forced all the way back down. Logic is the result of that as well. He's on the receiving end, and Stax goes down to the Storm. Unfortunate for him now, so the Logic has to have a little bit of a say in this end game. Don't Key slightly up on high ground. 3 builds against Logic, 0. And unfortunately for Logic, it will not end in happiness, as Don't Key slightly drops down from the top to pick up the victory royale. What a fantastic end to that game. Both players having no builds there at the end, Jacob.
Yeah, it just goes to show that all the madness that we saw, the different elevations of the natural terrain, and then the late usage of the rocket ram, displacing a lot of these players, even getting them forced to use their build just to protect themselves, even if they weren't in zone, really made the difference. But I only saw a handful of players that were in the last top 10 making it to this top 10 as well. So that leaderboard has to begin to jumble yet again, as that was game 3. That was the last chance before the half, and one of the last chances to control your own destiny.
Yeah, definitely. This is the highlights from the last game, of which there were many, as we saw mistakes made by some of our players, but also some fantastic plays on the other side of things, namely Stax coming through in this end game, putting on an absolute display of confidence and an absolute show when it came to taking high ground here. This was absolutely perfect. Actually lands on top of the other player as well. And this is how to take high ground. This is the perfect position to be in at this stage of the game. But you have to feel like he should have closed out a little bit better. Went down in Storm. Yeah,
it was unfortunate that, you know, he didn't have any heals to really bring himself back up, which kind of gave away that one to the last 2 opponents. And you saw Don't Key slightly dropping down, finishing the job. Maybe even knew his opponents was out of builds because he didn't try to go ahead and stretch forward. But 67 points for Staxaruni. These are the overall standings. So Stax has now stolen away that first place.
Yeah, really great stuff from Stacks right there. As you mentioned, these are the overall standings for our first 3 games of competition. Another big name there, revised in 24th. So it's still all to play for. 67 points being the target for all of these players right now. Of course, that will increase, but a lot of players that are in this sort of section still have it all to play for. Players that are a little bit lower down, their goals, their targets might be a little bit different. Maybe to try and just continue consistency. Maybe try and have a pop-off game if they can, because that can happen in solos. You can go from all the way down here, 61st to 80th, all the way into that top 20 in a heartbeat.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that you just have a couple consistent performances, maybe one pop-up performance there. It really shows to play the difference. So I wouldn't be too worried for any of these teams that are at the bottom side of the leaderboard just yet, because you saw some big monster games. You saw some 30 points, some 40-point games being dropped. So if you could get a couple of games of like that underneath your belt to close out the tournament, I think it can push you. Even if you're not going to get pushed into first place, we talked about there's still thousands of dollars up for grabs for each one of those placements as we trickle down into that top 100.
Yeah, we've seen the Rocket Ram being the difference in these games so far when speaking about strategy. Do you think that is the most important aspect of this current meta to try and master? Because it seems like those that do it well often come out on top.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those things that's very, very hard to master. There's a lot of RNG involved, and especially depending on where you're going to crash down at. But I think that's the biggest thing, choosing where you're going to crash down at, because it's easy to just to crash down to the front side of the zone. But we're seeing a lot of these players think outside of the box. In that last game, you saw Excerpt when he took out Chubbs. He landed at the top of that mountain, and it happened here yet again. Players went into the zone just to get the position on the high ground with that rocket ram. So it's not just the rocket ram itself, but it's about thinking outside of the box and how to utilize it.
Yeah, for sure. So many of our players ending up sort of rocket ramming straight onto that front side of zone, whereas a lot of players are sort of like delaying that rocket ram into a little bit later on, and then instead of running the last bit of their rotate, they're running the first bit of their rotate and then rocket ramming into the center of the next zone, which I think is a really important strategy, particularly in solos when so much chaos goes down, particularly when how all the builds it's breaking is absolutely incredible. And for Wei actually landing up on top of that high ground, we saw him getting on top of that mountain. I think high ground is such a difficult sort of position to play when we're in this current meta, but if you can connect yourself to a hill like he did, you stand a better chance, I think.
Yeah, and I think, you know, ultimate high ground is one of the things that a lot of players really go for. But I think being able to survive at maybe second height, third height, it might be a little bit of the answer here, because a lot of those people will target that ultimate high ground on the way up and on the way down. So maybe you kind of use that as a distraction to kind of slip through towards the rest of the game. But honestly, I think who knows, because yesterday in the zero build side of things, you really didn't see the Rocket Ram at all. It was Shockwaves, it was Crash Pad Juniors, and in this game, even though we're seeing some players utilize the Crash Pad Junior with the Romy Redeploy Gauntlet augment, it really comes down to that Rocket Ram that's really been game changing.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, thinking back to the beginning of that game as well, I think we're starting to see a little bit more early aggression. Thinking back to the Naughty Nets fights, we're seeing that all boil over at the beginning of the game. I think that's going to be where things are going to start to amp up a little bit, if you like, because, you know, as players that aren't doing so good need points, they're going to need to fight off spawn. Do you agree with that?
No, I do agree. It's going to be forced your hand. I said it before and I'll say it again. Once you get towards the second half of these games, 4, 5, and 6, depending on where you're at in the leaderboard, you can no longer control your destiny. If your game plan was to play calm, cool, collective, and passive towards the end, that's no longer an option. You may need to start taking these early game fights and then those eliminations that naturally present themselves at the end of the game. It's about finding that perfect balance, and with only 3 games left, you don't have much time left.
If you're one of those players that doesn't have too much time left, maybe you're one of those players that are a little bit lower down, is there something that you think they need to play for? I'm thinking, you know, maybe those forecast towers, is it worth trying to fight for them? Do you think those sort of mid-game objectives like the Rift Island are worth fighting for now?
No, I definitely do think whether if it's the Rift Island, the Forecast Towers, or the weapon caches, simply because they all have those slurp juices, and we've already seen slurp juices make the difference, especially in the end game. You pop them early. You know you might take damage from a player. You know you might take damage from the zone, so having them popped early allows you not to worry once you finally make it to the zone how fast you're going to heal. So I think depending on where you're at in the leaderboard, having one of those 3 things in mind is going to be a must.
So many questions that we've had to ask of our players so far, and they've had the answers. But of course, who's going to come out on top in the second half of the tournament? They had their half time to think about how things are going to go. As we hop straight onto the battle bus for game number 4 here, we're going to find out all of the answers to the rest of this competition. It really hasn't disappointed in action so far. It really hasn't disappointed in delivering what we were expecting from some crazy solo competition, some top tier solo competition. I'm excited to see which of these players can come through. As we've seen that Don't Key Slide, we haven't really seen their off-spawn too much. Frenzy Fields is the drop spot of choice. Uncontested, it seems like, almost entirely, bar that one player at the house.
Yeah, that's actually a little bit of a surprise. Got to imagine Piggle's probably nearby somewhere, because this is where he at least claimed he was going to drop on these drop maps. So he might be that one that's towards the south. Maybe he's towards the west. But that's a lot of loot that you're giving up to Don't Key slightly. A lot of metal that he's able to get from here as well. This and then one of the next buildings right in front of him. So he does have a chance for a ton of resources. It's about the loot. You can find a shotgun. There's a couple of chests over here as well. He at least gets something to work with in terms of shotgun. It is just going to be a common Maven, but I'd rather have a Maven than not have any shotgun overall.
Yeah, for sure. And these sort of situations get me thinking. I mean, what do you think is like the most important thing to prioritize when you're looking at a drop spot in solos? For me, I think it's, you know, loot is definitely an important aspect, but why do you think no one's going to Frenzy? Like, what's important?
I think that they just kind of want to utilize where you see a lot of the contestation is at, the mythic vaults, the regular vaults. I think they're trying to prioritize overall chest spawns rather than the loot that you can garner from the ground, because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all RNG, and you're not going to be guaranteed a certain weapon unless it's one of those god chests.
For sure, as we see Chubbs sat inside of Shady Stilts, their drop spot of choice. You can see, if you're wondering why the name of Shady Stilts in yellow, you actually get some drones that can actually drop some loot here. It's one of the sort of upgraded special POIs. There's, I believe, 3 potentially per game. And, of course, they can give you a little bit of an extra loot at your drop spot. I don't think it really impacts where these players land. They'll be landing at the same drop spot every single game. But maybe for those at home that want to try and get some extra loot inside of their Battle Royale games, then it's definitely be of value. But Elius, the player inside of Sanguine Suites, one of, I believe, 6 landing in this drop spot, 5 or 6 ending up going here. It's a bit of a mess sometimes when things do start to go crazy, and this is what we were talking about earlier. When it comes down to now or never, things can start to go crazy, players can start to fight when they might have not been before, and this is exactly what's happening. Chubb's getting pushed in, getting W key by another player. This is a really awkward situation, particularly in these buildings, because it's really, really difficult to traverse them as the other player gets aggressive.
Yeah, he has some heals here to get himself up to shape, but he doesn't have the time. Like you said, Expo just chasing him down like a dog who wants his bone. He buried him in the backyard, sent him back to the next lobby. For Expo, that's also a big boost of confidence, because now you have a little bit more freedom towards Shady Stilts. And then there's another fight going down right to the east of where he's located, and he immediately tries to turn in that direction. That was Hyrax, who got taken down by Jake. Probably sees it in the elimination feed, and then now he slows his roll, knowing, I don't want to take a risk there. I don't want to take him out. I'm just going to go ahead and continue with my game.
Exo Evil right here. Picking up that Mythic, and oh my goodness, is there a player sat outside of the vault door? I think I just saw someone. No, it's an NPC. Okay.
Oh, gosh.
I got myself worried for him right there for a sec. I thought it was a player. I think I've done that too many times. I've thought that the NPCs are actual players sometimes, and I get too scared to be players.
Yeah, you're not the only one calling out to my team. Yo, I need help. I need help. They come and help me. Like, and I was just kidding. It was just a joke. And then in my head, that wasn't a joke. I was actually worried. You can kind of see already Josh into another fight. He had some early game action in that last game. He did come out on top this time around. He does slow his roll just a little bit. At the very minimum, at least he has a lot of loot to work with. Especially when it comes to the heals, he can get his big pot back up. It's the shotgun shots as this one does continue. He just starts to fire off shots, not hitting full spreads. That's where it's going to be a little bit of worry. But Josh versus Ian on the other side, trying to play very, very wisely. Not just trying to bulldoze into the box. He's trying to play that smart game, use his brain instead of just his brawn.
Yeah, for sure. Trying to play smartly, particularly with some other players lurking in the close vicinity. For Josh, I like this play. Sort of in this similar sort of area to a lot of other players. And this is actually one of those hills that has one of those gliding features outside of it. So some players will box up on top of these and then get their Storm Surge damage and then glide on out. Of course, in a lobby of this caliber with the players of this incredible standard and aim potential, we don't often see it happen because, of course, as quickly as you can say fly in the air, you could be back to the lobby. So for Stacks, he's on the other side of the map, just opting to keep his feet on ground.
Smart play. I think that's something that comes with experience. Probably getting beamed out of the lobby more times than not. Probably learned how you're going to rotate around, especially you know, if there's a lot of people surrounded or if there's not. I'd love to see him pop that big pot and go pick up the little one. He does that right away. Expert. Someone who had a hot start to the tournament, winning the second game of the day. Just trying to keep that momentum going from one game to the next. Revised on the other side. These players are pretty close on the leaderboard to one another, so either one of them falling here this early in game 4 could be pretty drastic to the results. Could kind of push their backs that further up against the wall when it comes to game 5 and 6 and their position on that leaderboard.
Yeah, this is a nice disengage, I think, here, just knowing that there could be a lot more activity in this area as those forecast tower NPCs could potentially be spawning nearby. There could be a lot of people in the vicinity. And wow, are you seeing what I'm seeing here, Jacob?
Oh, see, I was wondering if people are actually going to use it. If I was him, I would maybe try to save it just a little bit longer because it does give you full HP and then it's a 60-second timer. But with a 1 tick, in theory, he's going to have 40 HP left by the time it's usable again. So it's not too bad of a decision, but it almost leads me to believe, did he get the ray gun? What else did he get in that vault that he chose to chug this jug?
Definitely the ray gun. 100% it was the ray gun. I think it's the only one that I would take the mythic chug jug over, I'd say.
What mythics are not in here that you'd like to see?
What mythics are not in here? Well, realistically, I want the kit shockwave launcher, but that's not in comp. I think it'd be quite fun to see people shocking around with that. Yeah, I like the charge. I want to see people use the charge. I liked it when the charge was actually in the game, like in the meta. I'm a fan of the charge shotgun, even if my gameplay sometimes with it doesn't show that. It's a cool weapon to use, and yeah, I like it. What about you?
I mean, besides the MK, I'm trying to think what other mythics have been in the game before, but I think you hit on some of the top 3, from the Alpha to the Charge to Kit's Launcher. But I think that would be a nice trifecta, getting one of each of those into the vault. But obviously, like you said, Kit's Launcher not in competitive. I think maybe we put Shockwaves, some sort of like legendary Shockwave, maybe the legendary Kinetic Blade. Something like that.
Ooh, okay. Legendary kinetic blade. Legendary mech that has hammers attached to each one.
No. I think the mech. Somebody's going to find you, Mini.
Yeah, I think that idea will get shut down by a lot of people very quickly. But for Piggle, actually able to pick up the forecast tower and, of course, claim it. So, looking pretty strong. And that's going to be something we're going to keep an eye on throughout the rest of this game, I think. If we see Piggle set up in a position that you're thinking, hey, why is he over there? We know that he, of course, knows where that next zone is going to be. So it almost gives a little bit of context as to why he's there. Yeah,
we saw the leaderboard before this game started. Stax Rooney was in first with 67 points. In perspective, Piggle is in 7th, losing that tiebreaker to Excerpt, who has a win on the day. And, you know, just kind of looking down the leaderboard, you know, anything is definitely possible. Revised even, you know, in that top 25 with 30 points. All it takes is one pop-off performance here on this day, and that'll put you in the conversation. And you want to do that here in Game 4. You don't want to wait until those last and final moments, but at the same time, in Game 6, when you need that pop-off performance, you have nothing else to lose. Sometimes it gives you a different swag or a different vibe as you're playing the game out.
Yeah, definitely. Having that ability just to have that confidence as well is so important. Piggle, I'm sure he'll be feeling that with that forecast tower buff. Blur Antics, our game number 1 winner. Not quite had the similar sort of game 2 and 3 that he would have liked. Now game 4, a chance for redemption, but no, as I say that, Aoxy shuts down any possible redemption arc for Blur Antics in game number 4 here. He's going to be resorting to game number 5 to make something happen of any sort, and wow, actually finding his combat cache. I think that's what that fight was all about. Both of them going for the same cache, and of course, if you don't know how the combat caches work, you're actually matched up against another player for that cache, so it's a 1v1 per cache. And it looks as though in this particular 1v1, Aoxy is the one that comes out on top.
See Juvesy slowly but surely trying to close this distance. He probably heard some of this commotion going down. He's just trying to be like that nosy neighbor coming on over, saying, what are you guys doing over here? And I think soon he's going to realize that Aoxy's just trying to go for the weapon cache. He's going to get there just in time to hear it open. On the other side, Dorito getting stuck up on Ayuluz. Might even know that somebody is going to be nearby, but now the full position is going to be given away. But Dorito is one of the players that isn't scared of a fight. He's not going to be one of the first ones to back down. You see him trying to hold his position, just farm up a little bit more, forcing his opponent to disengage. And this is a big moment for Elu's. 7 points so far. He needs a pop-off performance. He needs at least 20, 25 points in this game. So that way he doesn't make it hard on himself going into game 5, going into game 6.
Yeah, making sure that you can get as much points as you can on the board is important. Stacks, though, I just saw in the feed, I don't know if you saw it there, Jacob, he went down. So our first place player is actually down and out of game number 4. It seems to happen so often, so many of our top players going down early. And as we were saying, you need to make sure that this game is good to ensure that you don't leave it all to the last minute, like leaving homework to a Sunday night. He's actually, unfortunately, done exactly that. And is going to have to rely on game 5 and 6.
I feel like you were talking about me leaving my homework for a Sunday night, 10 p.m., right before I got to go to bed for school in the morning. But honestly, a 12-point differential between Stacks and Grimes here, who is in second place. It's actually now been dwindled down from 12 to 11 because we went down before the placement points came in. So Grimes is going to be looking to overtake that top spot, sit in the throne for now. He goes from one catch to the next, and that's like a little bit of a cheeky play. Boxes up and takes both of them away. 4 different slurps. Gave himself a pretty good loadout. Unfortunately, that none of them are going to be gold, so he's just stuck with that epic loot. Not too bad, though. Not too shabby. At least it's something that he can feel confident in, especially particularly with that 4 slurps. TR just looking into the distance, seeing the fight go down, trying to lend some shots in that direction, making it harder for anybody to try to survive. That was Extortion who took down Mail Me. Well, he mailed him for sure. He mailed him back to the lobby.
Did indeed. TR. And he absolutely beamed as he decides to try and make that rotation. Luckily for him, he's got all the heals in the world, but he's still trying to build, pop the slurp, get himself healed up, and I think he's just trying to make as much space as possible, so he's going to be able to pop that slurp juice without any problems. But that's the danger, Jacob. That's the danger of rotating like that when there's players that are already pitched up nice and high. You become the target, and Grimes also doing just the same. Actually, it looks as though he's just below this Rift Island. Big, bold play if he does go up for it, because, of course, he has the prime position right now to take first place.
Yeah. Unfortunate enough, though, that even if anybody goes for that island at the top, there's just not a lot of time to really utilize his position. You can see it's on the edge of zone. Much different than we've seen in some of these previous games, it being slap dab in the center to where you can kind of utilize not just the loot, the elevation that it gives you as well. Grimes, he was one of those players that just quickly rotated on past that. Doesn't want to make the risk to try to go for it. Dorito, on the other hand, got positioned below the Rift Island. Getting attacked just a little bit, forced to drop down low. Revive's the one that's hot on his heels. But not only those heals that he has in his hand, you can see there's a lot of slurp plants nearby. At least 50 HP right in the line of sight that we can see. And I think Dorito's going to try to utilize those. Save as many of the slap splashes and the minis as possible for later on in the game. And if he holds his position, they will respawn, and he can use them yet again just to get up to tip-top shape.
Yeah, every 15 seconds, those are going to appear again. We can see it right before our very eyes. And, of course, if you can claim those, that just enables you to save so many heals. It would be a lot better of a strategy, I think, for Dorito's case if he was able to swap out that one slap splash with maybe some slurp juices or something. It'd be a lot more valuable. Because, of course, he's almost relegating that actual particular spot to just a singular splash. But looks as though the fight for the island wasn't much of a fight. As Zircon right now does actually benefit from some of the loot, but gets tagged up in the process. There's another player nearby. I think he might have picked up those slurp juices from the island. Has now revised 2 eliminations, running through the lobby, trying to run up on top of this flower as well. Actually, just not quite working for him, but the second time the charm for him. Looking pretty solid up on this top of the hill, but not quite in zone, so he's got to make his way in. The longer he waits here, the longer people are going to be able to set up in front of him and look back, but he hasn't got far to go.
Yeah, and luckily for him, he has a lot of that elevation, but it's that same elevation that makes him an easy target for that Rift Island. Luckily for him, he backtracks, goes for that shield fish, and this is where he drops, gives up the elevation that he has, but runs into another player. That's Logic on the other side, but shots still firing in from multiple directions. Revive's doing exactly what his opponent just did, takes that slurp plant, and since they're now in the zone, they will not recharge just like regular if they're outside of the zone. Revive's just trying to gatekeep his opponent before he makes his journey, realizes he's going away, trying to disengage, so Revive's just going back to his original plan, the original trajectory he was looking at before. And you can see him checking out every single one of these boxes. Doesn't want to take a chance of getting caught off guard.
Yeah, he's just trying to rotate his way in. Nice plays from Revise. As you mentioned, that Slurp Flower not going to regenerate, so he's going to have to stick with 174 HP. Yasir on the other side of the screen. He's got that Breacher shotgun. We haven't seen that in play too much yet, but this thing packs a punch shaker. It can break walls, weak, hard build walls in one shot, and of course the wood in one shot as well. With Yasir, he's going to need to use the shotgun in a second as there's a player on his wall, tries to get out, but just gets caught in his own feet, gets caught in his own box, and it's CR that takes him out. Revise inside of a fight as well. Hits a great shot onto Fungus. Can he get another? He can. There's another shot. Back-to-back eliminations across the lobby, and Revised gets the fruits of his elimination.
Yeah, he's starting to heat up. He gets an upgrade to his loadout. He gets the choice about what heals he wants to take overall. And you can see CR using that same choice. You talked about the Breacher. Now he has it in his inventory, ready to break through a lot of the box. And that's something that we see in CR throughout multiple games. Not be afraid to knock on the door and try to take somebody on full force. A little bit of a short pad. Dorito messes up that one, but his opponent's allowed to escape just that much sooner. A little bit more quick as well. Dorito just set up a short pad. He wants to take full utilization of that launch pad. Quickly goes ahead, but he doesn't go all the way ahead of the zone. He lands quickly on a flopper, just trying to go ahead and utilize and recycle as many of the builds as possible. That way he doesn't have to use the slap splashes early, because that's both shield and HP that he's going to get. You can see him bypassing those Crash Pad Juniors right into the Slurp plants, just trying to make sure that he could save a lot of those resources for later on in the same game.
Revised, ever aggressive. We can see he's in a position that, knowing him and his prowess when it comes to solo competition and competition in general when it comes to Fortnite, he will not be happy with the position he's in right now. We can see him picking up eliminations. We can see him just being a little bit more aggressive, just scouting out this player on the rotate. Actually going to shoot at the bush just to make sure there's no one in there, but following this player's rotation, this just shows how smart Revised is about this. So many people would have just sprayed at that player rotating in, and then that player has to heal, and then they end up holding you. So we see a player behind Revised actually shooting him, so now Revised has to box up, try and get a little bit of that wood back. And this is where things can get a little bit messy if people try and fight each other on the rotation. CR is just able to run inside of the zone. Nobody in the immediate vicinity, but of course with the distance he has to travel, you have to think that it's not going to be an easy rotation by any means.
Yeah, he's probably just hoping, praying that a lot of these players that are rotating both parallel and perpendicular to him, that they just don't really start to shoot those shots, because it's when a lot of these players outside of the zone begin to engage and fight with one another, that's what makes it almost a no-win scenario for either player that is involved. And this is where CR is going to run into the most congested players here on this side of the map, and he quickly realizes the position he's putting himself in. Boxes up, peeks through the cone, gathers information before he makes his next move. I think that's a smart play by him.
Yeah, really smart indeed. You just have to stagger your rotations sometimes. You don't have to make it all in one go, particularly when you have the rocket ram as well. You know, plan B could just be, if he does get beamed a little bit, he can just rocket ram in, just hope for the best, as he does have that in his locker. But wow, this is a really, really well played rotation. You can see it right there again. He's not afraid to stop. A lot of players will just keep going and think, yep, let's just beeline it for the zone. But he sees there's a player up on the hill that actually makes an edit with a window, and he's like, right, okay, let me block that off. Let me make sure I'm not wasting any heals here. This doesn't have to be complicated. The zone is not pressuring me. As Revised under the pressure of having no heals right now. So that's the result of getting a little bit too fraggy, if you like, on the rotation, maybe by him or some other players trying to get some eliminations, as CR picks up his second of the game, and none other than Grimes actually that goes down, so that's a huge elimination. But he's hungry for more. He wants even more as he gets inside of the box. The other player decides to hop back out, but he wants the loot. He doesn't care about the elimination. He wants those slurps. He wants that loot. He wants those mats. Yeah,
that's very, very important for CR, and I like the way he's playing careful at the same time. Not afraid to go into the boxes, but just as quick as he's going in, he's exiting out, building himself a new home to kind of find some safety. But as soon as the zone pulls, he goes back to what got him here, peeking through the cones, gathering information. He knows it's going to be needed on this next rotation, and that's exactly what he's trying to do, pulling up the mini-map, probably marking his path, figuring out which is the right way to go, and when is going to be plan B. And you can see him by putting down that cone and the way he's phased through it. It does look like he's going to go for a rocket ram rotation here in just a few seconds.
Yeah, looking at the zone as well, there's so many people on that side, the congested side, so I think this is the perfect time to use a rocket ram when the max pull is on the other side, onto the dead side of the zone, because you know that everyone else has to do it too, everyone else has to make a rotation, so all these players in the lobby are smart, they're not going to be playing to try and eliminate players on this rotation, or at least you'd hope, so he can actually safely use that, and particularly when there's so many builds inside of Mega City and so many buildings to have some cover from. This is looking like a really solid rotation for Piggle, though. They're already set up for success. We saw it earlier on. We saw him have that forecast tower. He knew that this zone was going to be here before almost everyone else.
Yeah, and he used it wisely. You can see, judging by the damage on the threshold, his whole game has been do one shot here on a player, rotate in. One shot here on a player, rotate in. So even though he's not high above the damage threshold like we saw some of the other players in the lobby, it's because he focused on his rotation and he realized, as long as I get some elevation and beat a lot of the teams there, those opportunities for those tags will come to fruition, just like you're seeing. A lot of opportunity here. Almost looked like he might have even got that elimination. Wow. Yes, he did. He does take down Ian. So I think by now, Storm Surge is no longer going to be a worry for Piggle. It's about just rotating from point A to point B. And luckily for him, he does have those rails that he can use once the zone begins to open up. So it's not going to be too hard of a journey for Piggle as long as he plays his cards right.
Yeah, he sees that building towards the west, but unfortunately he can't land on it. I was thinking maybe he could rocket ram onto that building, but it's the building that has the sort of flying thing, the
dragon thing at the top.
The dragon. I mean, yeah, the dragon area. I think it's called like the slipstream, however you want to call it. You can't actually land on top of that, so maybe he might use that to his advantage, or actually he might be turned off at this stage, actually thinking about it. So I believe at 5th zone that is turned off, so maybe he is actually able to land on top of that building. Just literally thinking out loud right now as to how he could rotate this, but of course that's for him to decide in just a second. For Revive, it looks as though he has picked up some heals now in the form of one mini, so he's going to have to try and pick up a refresh sooner rather than later. 31 builds as well, and that's the danger of trying to get a little bit too aggressive in this mid-game, Jacob. You can be left with nothing when it comes down to it.
Yeah, and on the other side, well, Piggle's smooth sailing, somebody crashes into a Rise, nice shots, gets that elimination on the Poyo. That's the same Poyo I think it is. That might even be our global champion participant that Piggle just took out. Let him know, doesn't matter what accolades that you may or may not have underneath your belt, you're gonna have to go through me. And this is actually a great rotation coming out. Not very many people are gonna be trying to look upwards to try to see what's going on. And he catches himself on the edge of the building. I know you're debating, do you go on top? Did it turn off? Well, he doesn't have to worry. He gets himself a nice penthouse at the top and builds himself more real estate to work with.
Yeah, this is perfect stuff. There's another player thinking the exact same thing. That's the thing when you have a lobby full of geniuses, everyone is thinking about the same idea. Now it pulls all the way back up to the north, so Piggle's not going to be able to use this building in particular to rotate. I hope he does notice that it has turned off. Of course, he does have that rocket ram, so he can... Oh, it hasn't turned off, so this one doesn't turn off. Interesting. And I know there's a lot of other ones around the map, the slipstreams that will. So this one, yeah, I thought it did 100%. So... This could be a rotation for him, quite frankly. He could use this really easily.
A free and safe rotation for the most part. And then he has the option, because he doesn't have to use his rocket ram, he can use it as a get-out-of-jail-free card. If push comes to shove, he can just wait, put some shots onto these players, even though he doesn't necessarily need it. He just wants to make their job that much harder. But Revive out of nowhere ends up in the same box as Dorito, and he eats him up quickly for lunch.
Beautiful stuff from Revive. I talked about him needing a refresh, and who better than Revive to find himself a refresh right there. Absolutely perfect stuff for CR. He's actually using a rocket ram to try and get to the front side of the zone. He's looking for a refresh of his own. He's got 12 builds. He's of course got that breacher shotgun, so he can get right involved, and involved he does. A perfect refresh. There's some slurp juices on that body as well if he can try and find them without getting absolutely destroyed by all of those rocket rams. And look at the refresh that he's managed to get on that right side of the screen. Huge stuff from him. Piggle, though, is stuck in a storm.
He just went back in the zone. He played his cards right yet again. And these are those unorthodox plays that I'm talking about. He gets another elimination onto Nasin. Huge plays by Piggle. Every one of these points are going to be earned by him, because it's the decisions that's really setting himself apart from everybody else in the lobby. And because he has that rocket ram, he has the safety knowing if anybody shoots him down, that I'm going to be able to catch myself on the way down. And since he's so high up as well, Mini, he doesn't have to worry about anybody unfortunately rocket ramming him down as well.
Another elimination. He's looking down. Everyone looks like ants from up here, and he's finding eliminations left, right, and center. This is the meta when it comes to high ground this season. If you can get yourself high enough, you can, of course, get avoiding all of the people down below. But unfortunately, the high ground party is ended early as he does get chopped down. But he'll be quite happy with that. He still has 63 bills, which at this stage of the game is not bad at all. He wants more, though. He wants another elimination. He gets shocked back into the storm. And other players like, what are you doing down here? You were a high ground player a moment ago. You are not allowed.
They probably followed him all the way down, realizing he might not see this one coming, but not too much damage. Didn't fall too far into the zone. CR, last time we seen him, he was ramping up, getting more and more aggressive, but running out of builds. Gets a nice elimination, so at least he's able to kind of replenish some of those materials. Thanks to the flopper as well. He gets his HP back up, using the rocket ram, quickly trying to bulldoze his way into the zone, and it almost looks like he might have got another elimination, or it caused it at the very least.
Yeah, fantastic stuff from CR. He's just looking to cause havoc as he's done all day. That Breacher's shotgun is doing just that. It looks as though he's got a decent amount of builds as well to play this mid-ground layer. It looks as though he's trying to find someone to pick up the next refresh. He's not afraid to hop inside of the box and afraid to do any damage because he knows that he can pack a punch with that shotgun. He's trying to do it, hops inside of the box. It's all manic going on the backside of the zone. On1 is involved as well. It's CR back inside of the storm, can't quite make his way back in. What's going to happen in the end game is Piggle that gets taken out finally. It's CR that goes down as well. Of course, On1 is going on an absolute roll, and Dash falls down to On1. The On1 train continues to chug, and wow, what a fantastically played endgame. He was just on a roll and didn't look like stopping there, Jacob.
4 eliminations in that end game to win it. I was looking at the feed. I was like, man, he has the hat trick, and then he wins it overall. Those are the opportunistic plays that we're looking for. And Piggle as well, making it towards the very end of the game, using his brain more so than his brawn, finding those eliminations as they naturally presented itself. And with what you called early on in that game, first place going down, that opened up the door for anybody to take that top spot.
Yeah, the leaderboard's going to be absolutely crazy, but of course, what was crazy was, of course, game number 4. We take a look at some of our highlights from this game. Action as per usual. Piggle with the big brain strats, using, of course, that zone knowledge to his advantage, and even just beaming people out of the air. This is what it's all about when you can play the high ground, but of course, it doesn't last forever, and the battles on low ground will continue to go. As CR, what a performance, just bragging out.
Yeah, I'm learning more and more of the legend of CR. He actually plays pretty well. I know I talked up FaZe when it came to the PlayStation Cups before. Well, he's another name that could be probably on the console Mount Rushmore, earning every bit of respect. And with 8 HP, though, On1 deserved that victory royale. And these are just the scores for Game 4. On1 scored 42 points in that game alone. You got to imagine he could be in that top 10 for now.
Yeah, and On1's one of the most experienced players in this lobby, so this is the sort of position that he'll definitely want to find himself in. As we have a little look at our standings from just Game 4 alone, this is a really turning point, a real turning point, I should say, inside of the tournament, because, of course, as you mentioned, some of our top-tier players going down, opening up the first-place spot, and, of course, that top 3 wide open for some other people to make their presence known. And I'm expecting some big action going into these last 2 games, Jacob, if that's anything to go by.
Yeah, I think with Stacks, you see him there going down at 76. You got Yasir going down at 64th. A lot of those players that we thought were going to be able to stay consistent throughout each and every one of these games slipped up in that Game 4. And much like yesterday, it's making for a great show, especially when we get into our final 2 games of the day.
Yeah, it's getting really close to the top. Of course, we've seen our top-tier players going down really early on. I'm excited to see how the rest of the games go. You got any predictions, Jacob, as to how the rest of the day is going to go?
I mean, I think it's still going to be a toss and turn for that top 5. I think it's going to remain close through the top 5, even in that top 10. And I think Game 6 will have maybe a couple of competitors, maybe even more, having a potential to take that top spot. But as I said before, it's not all about first place. There's still thousands of dollars up for grabs as you go down each and every one of those placements.
Yeah, so many storylines. I think that's what's most important for some of our players that are further down is you might not be playing for first place anymore. This is a sort of tournament. This is a sort of stage of the tournament where you have to think about, what am I actually playing for here? Is it going to be the top prize? Is it not? I think for those sort of players, you have to just play your own game, try and maybe switch up a few strategies here and there, but ultimately just try and play to your own storyline and try and make it as good as possible.
Yeah, just play towards a goal at the end of the day. Say, hey, I may be in, let's just say 75th place. Well, I want to move up into a next couple of those brackets of those dollars, line my pockets with even more. So even though there's only 2 games left, even though some of these players might be towards the bottom of the leaderboard, it's still a perfect opportunity to make up for that lost time.
Yeah, I mean, even in that end game right there, we saw Piggle, of course, going for that forecast out, and we see how vital that can be going into these end games. Absolutely crucial, because, of course, knowing where those zones are is absolutely crucial, isn't it?
No, it definitely is. But with 2 games left on the day, I go ahead and ask you, is there any singular player that you're looking for to really make some noise that are not in the top 5 currently?
I want to see Pump. I want to see Pump start to turn it up. We haven't really seen too much from him yet. Your brother, as you've proclaimed at the beginning of the show. I'm expecting some big things from him. We haven't quite seen it. I think it's been a little bit difficult for him at Mega City, not quite making his presence known as we would have expected, and maybe being a little bit too aggressive when it comes down to fighting. So this is, a difficult situation for him. What about you?
No, I got to agree. Pump, I think on one, he buffed up 42 points in that last game. He has 44 overall, so it goes to show that it just takes one game to really make the difference here in this PlayStation Solo Build Cup.
Yeah, this is what it's all about. PlayStation solo builds. It's been so exciting so far as well. It's been so many plays that I haven't really expected from a lot of these players that are coming through and actually surprising us. I mean, Piggle going up on that high ground, even just knowing that the flying thing was actually going to work, of course, that slipstream. That was a genius play, actually saving that rocket ram as well.
Yeah, he'd be able to kind of use it towards the end. I called it out that once he starts to build up, that the potential of somebody rocket ramming him towards the low ground is no longer going to be there, but shooting him down is, and it is what exactly happened, and he was able to catch himself with a rocket ram, use that to go to the front side of the zone, and secured a top placement again. So I'm, might be even looking at Piggle, but he's kind of in that top side of the leaderboard already. He's actually in first place. He has 80 points, and there's only 1 point differential between him and CR, who's at 79 points in second place. From there, the gap kind of does open up. 12 points from there, and then another 14 points after that. So I think in this last game, for the players that still have the potential to take that #1 spot, it's going to mean so much. You may not have to go ahead and take first in this game, but you have to keep yourself in that conversation.
You really do. And this is where the conversation starts to come to a close, as we're beginning to enter the latter stage of this tournament. Of course, game number 5 is upon us. Game number 4 did not disappoint, as always. On one going an absolute spree of eliminations at the end of the game. Game number 5 begins. This is a time for players to think about their strategy. Will we see some switch-ups on players that are a little bit lower down, or will we see some of our kings at the top of the leaderboard get dethroned as things can really shake up? We're going to find out right here in game number 5. What do you expect, Jacob? Do you expect players to start switching up things, or do you think... Yeah?
100% players are either going to switch up their drops, switch up their play style, get a little bit more aggressive. And it's honestly going to be a must, especially if you're maybe at the bottom of the leaderboard and you kind of have nothing to lose. You either, going to walk away with $100 or at least go down trying to get more.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Everyone earns in this tournament, so everyone's walking home with some cash, some considerably more than others. I'm sure everyone will not only be wanting that, of course, first place spot for the cash, but of course, the bragging rights that come with it. All of these players are top competitors. They want to win no matter what, even just because a lot of these players, they know each other outside of the competition as well. Although they're foes for the 6 games today, they're friends too, So it's that friendly rivalry is definitely prevalent in a lot of solo events, a lot of Fortnite competitive events. So excited to see which one of our players will really take that by grasp and take hold of first place. On one though, our first place player from our last game, doing pretty good in terms of looting, managing to avoid some early action. Piggle, a really impressive performance from our leader in that last game. And this is actually the player that's landing at the Frenzy Fields house. We saw him actually claiming that forecast tower in the last game. I'm not quite sure if it's spawned in this game. You usually get to see a sort of visual cue as to whether it's on the map from his gameplay perspective. Can't quite see it. Yep, there it is, just in the background. So he's going to be able to claim that again if he follows the same blueprint as last game, but that's the thing about these. They're so valuable. Is it worth going for at this stage, Jacob? Because he's in first place.
I think it's definitely worth at least going in that direction. Going for is a whole nother story, depending on how you feel, depending on what information you gather as you inch closer and closer to the tower. But I think it's definitely worth at least adding into a part of your game plan. Same could be said for CR, but I don't think he had that same luck of the tower being over in his direction. So kind of like business as usual. As we jump on board Stack, 67 points. He has tasted that top spot before. He got down early in that last game. It really costed him first place, but at least he's in the conversation. He's only 13 points down, not too far off. A big game here will put him right back into the conversation, or maybe even first, and then Dash is kind of one position below. You see the 67 to 63, 17 points down, and if anything goes and follows the trend of yesterday, I think one of our top players might misstep here, and if they do, it's going to make for an exciting Game 6.
Absolutely. It's already incredibly tense. It's already incredibly close, and I think if you're Stacks right now, you'll be quite happy with the way that that last game played out, that some of the other top players didn't actually have that great of a game. So the deficit right now for him is only 13 points behind first place, and I'm sure that he's pretty happy with that. And of course, Dash on the screen right now, 63 points. As you mentioned, only one place behind Stacks in 4th place right now. So just looking pretty strong. Grims, another one of our players that was, I believe, in 2nd place going into that last game, not quite having the best game either. So now sat in 5th place, but still a solid position to be in, with potential for both of these last 2 games to go well for him, and of course, maybe, just maybe, come out on top.
Yeah, he's literally all over the spectrum here. He's out of 4th place, the game after 94th, and then at 5th place, and the game after at 59th. So if that trend does continue, he's due for a good game here, possibly top 5, top 10. He just has to play into his history up until this point. You can see he's just scavenging together a lot of loot towards the outskirts of Mega City before going inward. Finds his rocket ram, his tool of rotation. He knows he has more than enough HP. It's just about making sure that he has the builds to match and line up with the loot that he has.
Sure. Of course, only the Grey Infiltrator is not going to be the ideal shotgun of choice. Plenty of builds, though, so if he does want to get a little bit fraggy at the beginning, he can do. Yagvir right there on the other side. We've seen him fighting this sort of area for a lot of today, and he looked at by so many different players, and Grimes just knows that, yeah, I need to try and get some Storm Surge tags. Actually stuck in between 2 players right now, so maybe this could be the reason for him to try and disengage, get out of here, and just enjoy the non-crazy action off spawn, like we've seen from Mega City sometimes. But, Grimes getting all the way back up on top. I like this play, making sure he's extra safe all the way up on top. Doesn't have to be down there, down below. He's got the penthouse view of the rest of the lobby now and can maybe look for some more Storm Surge tags.
I just found myself a new hiding spot. Didn't even know that existed, to be able to hide up there. Maybe you edit the floor to where it's just one tile. You can wait for somebody to kind of creep up. Well, thank you, Grimes. You're teaching me something. That's what I love about Fortnite. I feel like there's always something to learn every single day, depending on who you're watching.
I mean, even in that last game about that, the flying thing in the middle, you know, the slipstream. I didn't even know that didn't turn off. So the fact that I didn't even know if Piggle knew, if he did, that was actually genius. And that is part of the game. It's about adaptability. It's about learning every single game, because the zone is in a completely different spot in each and every game when it comes to end games. So you could, one game you could be in Mega City, the next you could be in Breakwater Bay. So knowing these little intricacies of each drop spot, even if you're not landing there, can prove to be absolutely vital when it comes to the end game. Grimes, though, looking pretty strong right now, all the way up on top of the buildings. Not quite sure about the Infiltrator. I think I'm the #1 Infiltrator hater at the moment. I'm just not a fan of it, but he might be. He might suit his playstyle, and that's what Fortnite's all about. You have different guns, different weapons to suit different playstyles. Piggle sat outside of this forecast tower, just actually looking to try and claim it as soon as possible. It's actually going to appear, or the NPC is going to appear in 7 seconds, so he knows that. He's attacked him in the process. It's going to be really awkward for him. He's going to have to heal up and then try and attack the bots, but everyone else is also thinking the same.
Yeah, you see Zell, the guy who landed a couple of those shots, building into the distance and trying to inch himself closer. As the forecast tower appeared, you almost see all of those arrows in the mini-map begin to turn directions, make it a little bit of a focus. Piggles is trying to box it up as close as he can, but because of the boss just spawned a little bit farther away than he expected between him and Zell, it's definitely going to be a risk to try to go over there, even if you do get the elimination, to try to get those slurps. Probably have to expend a lot of builds to make it a possibility. Stacks on the other side, just trying to make a rotation himself. And he's running away from one player, but right into the hands of another. Gets his shields dropped down low, forced to stabilize his position momentarily as he heals up.
Good stuff from Piggle. I like the confidence here. I think this is why he's in our first place spot. So many players would have just thought, you know what, right, I got it last game. I'm in first place. I want to try and play a little bit more calmly. I don't want to take the risk of getting this forecast tower, but no.
Looks like people are hot. Yep, I was gonna say, looks like people are hiding in that direction.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you got it. You're gonna bring it right to me regardless. So Piggle's gonna be stuck with this tough decision. Is it worth continuing to beeline for? Do you want to wait and waste some time just a little bit? Hopefully Razor kind of disengages off that position, but he's boxed it up. He set his house on top, and he's ready to go ahead and wait as long as he possibly wants, and that forces Piggle in a position to kind of look behind. Knows he can't just go straight for it, put some shots onto someone who once was putting shots on him. That's Zell.
Yeah, a lot of people would sort of think, you know, why doesn't he just run away, run into Storm? But the difficulty with this card is that it actually shows up on the map. So every single person in this game right now will be able to see where Piggle is at any given moment because he's carrying this card. Even when he drops the card right there, it's still shown on the map. It's just shown as not claimed. So the strategy here for Piggle, he has to play it very, very carefully. He knows there's another player there. Maybe he's just dropping it. You know what? Maybe he's saying, I am in first place. Do I need to take this risk? Yes, it's going to be absolutely valuable for me, but is it worth potentially throwing the tournament?
Yeah, I think he's probably making a smart decision. He's wasted too much time, and instead, even though he does have that slurp juice, instead of just letting the zone kind of eat him alive, he's just like, let me just continue on with my game. I've done more than enough. Even though he did use it in that last game, I've done more than enough without it, and I gotta believe in myself and have that confidence to know that I can do even more without it. As he quickly kind of disengages, and he goes from one plan to the next. He talked about adaptability. Now he is adapting on the fly because he has to continue to rotate in, and I think he made the perfect decision at the perfect time, because now he can just continue his rotation, knowing where the next zone is going to be, and he's really not wasting any time other than trying to farm for mats.
You saw that the zone was far as well. The long pull. You don't want to be stuck in Storm when you're in first place. You don't want to be in that position. You want to give yourself the best possible chance at making endgame. And if that means sacrificing, knowing where the next zone's going to be, maybe that's so be it sort of thing. Because he might just get the zone RNG. He might just get the zone luck anyway, so it might not be as valuable as it once was, but he's used it at the right time, used it to propel himself, give himself a little bit of a shockwave up to the first place spot, but now he's playing his mats a little bit more carefully, he's playing his time a little bit more carefully as well, so he doesn't need to do that. I think that's what we talk about so much, is that not only are these forecast towers and these Rift Islands good opportunities to pick up some loot, they're also a great way of actually getting yourself higher up in the leaderboard if you need it. It's another plan, it's another opportunity if you do find yourself in that situation.
Ooh. Wow. On one, looking like he was just safe there for a moment. Nobody really looking his direction. As soon as he jumps out into the open, multiple players make him a focus of the lobby. Shots still squeaking through. Any nook, any cranny, it's just going to go. And there's the shots. There's just so much pressure going down. Crashpad Jr., but it's also the same thing that causes his demise. Jumps in the air, and it's CR who finds that elimination to take him out. +2 for him.
Yeah, the Crashpad Juniors. He still had mats there, so I think he just had to try and get out and was hoping that he could land and build, but he wasn't so lucky. Piggle, though, been quite fortunate with his cash spawn. Looks as though it's quite close, and CR.
Very not noticeable. It's the 1 point differential. CR stole first place back in the middle of this game because of that elimination.
True, yeah, looking at the points right now, yeah, of course, that elimination has actually turned the tides. So, although Piggle is looking in a pretty strong spot with his cash, it was an elimination so far that is the difference. So that's how close this battle is between these two players, and of course players that are around in the name of Stacks and others. That's the difference at the moment, Jacob. That's how close things are.
Yeah, and yesterday showed that 1 point was the difference between first and second. Now it's 1 point yet again here in game number 5. You know, I said we were in for a retreat, but I didn't know it was going to be a king-size treat for all of us at home. Stacks is trying to go ahead and make his rotation in, and I think a lot of these players are learning as the day has gone on that these early game fights, even though you might need materials, may not be as fruitful as some would think. They're choosing to rotate a lot quicker than they have in the previous games.
Is that CR on another cache potentially? I'm seeing a little bit of a blue glow.
Looks like
Not quite sure.
Like
it looks like, doesn't it? It sounds like, I think he could just be on another cache, which will again get him some more slurp juices. Yeah, there it is. You can just see it peeking up under that metal. Wow, this is looking good. If you're CR right now, particularly when it comes to his mechanical and fragging prowess in this game, it's looking very, very good.
Yep, choosing to drop the minis for a big pot. Probably get his shields up sooner rather than later. And this is where the Rift Island, even though it's not in the center zone, it still has a chance. Honestly, it still has a chance to be in the zone in this next one as well because of how much of the right side, the eastern portion, is covered in that water. But if I had a guess, I don't know, you guess as well. I think it's going to go towards the north. I think it's going to move over towards Sanguine Swedes, put the Rift Island maybe at the edge of zone or just outside of zone.
Yeah, a lot of the times the zone does pull away from that Rift Island. A lot of the times it does keep pulling as well, traditionally and more commonly. But I suppose we'll have to wait and see. It's often quite a fun game to play. Which way is the zone going to pull? Maybe you guys at home can sort of involve yourself as well. I'm going to say it's going to be a northeast. We're going to get a Sanguine Sweets end game.
We agree. Great minds think alike.
Love it.
A lot of practice. A lot of getting taken down early just as the zone moves is my history. But hopefully somebody could utilize it. Rift Island's going to spawn. You got Easy's World going up against Faith at the top of the island. But for now, it's going to be Easy. We'll go ahead and box up rather quickly. Builds a base 3 layers high. And then quickly goes to try to refarm the materials that he just once lost.
Yeah, this is the most important thing when you're fighting for this Rift Island. You want to try and claim this center box, this center cube, if you like, where that loot is actually going to spawn. Because if you have control over this, you actually fend off anyone else that might be trying to go for the loot. Because they think, you know, even if I can claim it just on the edge of the claim section, I'm not going to get the loot because he's already claimed that central area anyway. So pretty good stuff from Easy's right here. And it looks as though he's trying to fend off anyone that could be potentially rifting out. But no one's going to contest once they know that it's already been claimed. And he's actually able to get some more slurp juices to add to his inventory. Of course, to stay up here as well as we get to see where this next zone's going to pull. Will he be in the zone? We'll have to wait and see. Stacks also stacked up on those slurp juices. 4 in his inventory alongside a rocket ram, assault, or SMG I should say, and that Sharp 2 shotgun with some spare loot and a spare base as well. Looking very, very strong indeed. We just seem to be going from POV to POV of absolutely stacked players, Jake.
Yeah, and you see what Faith is doing here. Instead of leaving a lot of those heals inside of the vault where he can't really get to them later on in the game, he's just throwing them out. He's built some extra brick right towards his base where he's going to go to. And I expect him to kind of build and give himself the edge of that Rift Island so that way he can look across. And if he takes damage, it's not too much of a worry simply because of all those extra heals that he got. And then he going ahead and switched his combat for the Twin Mag. And I expect that once he starts to make this rotation off this island, he's going to pick up his combat SMG once more to kind of get himself as much of a great loadout as possible. As Grimes probably waiting so deep, found a weapon cache and using those med kits to try to wait. As soon as it spawns, he's able to get the metal, all that loot, and then even those slurp juices that we see be so fruitful for a lot of these players in the lobby, including Piggle, if he can find the time to get it off. And oh, what a sacrifice, and a nice shot being traded off. But luckily for him, the slurp juice is already active. He's wasting a lot of materials, trying to stay alive. I see this whole fight going down. Other players are lending a helping hand over in this direction, just trying to at least get him out of the lobby, even if they don't get the points.
Yeah, really dangerous moments right there for Piggle. I've been in that situation. A lot of people would have when you're in a good position in the game. You have everything you need, and then there's a player knocking on your door, causing all kinds of problems. Luckily for Piggle, he lives to tell the tale. 239 above as well. He's looking healthy and well. On the other hand, though, CR not quite as good, but he does actually find himself above the Storm Surge threshold, only below for a couple of seconds there, but I don't even think he even needs any loot. Looking at his loadout on the right side of the screen, potentially materials could be the only thing you could say he needs. So the same with Piggle, really, with a open inventory slot as well. This is a real big battle. These are the 2 players that are leading at the moment, of course. 2 players that are on the top of the leaderboard. One with 82 points, one with 81. If they both have a good game, it could be a 2-horse race going into Game 6. But this is Fortnite, this is Battle Royale, this is PlayStation Cup. Anything can happen.
Yeah, you see, there's not really a lot of placement points that's been awarded so far. The first threshold is 75, which everybody's still alive got at least one. The next threshold is going to be the top 50, which is another +1 point. And that's exactly why I spoke about it's just a bunch of +1 points into the top 30 even. It's not until you get to that top 8 where you get the majority of those placement points. 15 should have been granted by that point. 30 if you win the game. So staying alive is going to be a must, especially for someone like Stax, who's in contention. He's already tasted that first place position on the leaderboard so far, and he's just trying to take it back. Even though he has an open slot, he has more than enough heals in those 2 slurp juices. He has mobility in the rocket ram, and he got himself a nice position at the edge of zone.
This is really good. This is exactly the sort of position you want to be in when you're chasing down that first place spot. Of course, off the back of a really not so favorable game for Stax, he really wants to make a stance and make a statement in this lobby and say, yes, I want to be back up on top of the lobby. Hasn't actually won a game yet, so maybe this is going to be the perfect time for him to do so. We see Yazvi going down in the feed as well. Stax is just trying to make his presence known on this other player. If he can actually find this elimination, that'd be a really nice refresh for him. He's trying to just claim as much of this piece control as possible. The player just tries to evade his attention. Only 57 above the storm size threshold as well, so he's going to need this. And that's why he's getting extra aggressive for it.
Yeah, I was about to say, it makes a little bit more sense, because even though he has an open slot, still has a stack loadout, so he probably knew, probably counting the surge and saying, hey, I got to get damage onto somebody. Why not be the guy next to me? Triples his storm surge damage, and then quickly goes right back up to the cone. He wants to go ahead and gather the information. Being at the edge of zone, that's where a lot of these players will begin to rotate in from the south, try to get that position. CR, very, very similar spot, but just more congested than we saw a moment ago. He's doing a good job of separating himself and the rest of his opponents. Even with an empty slot, not too much to worry about in terms of heals, in terms of weapon. It's just the resources, it's just the materials that worries me just a little bit. Even though he may be fine for now, if the zone pool is far away, that's where it's going to get drastic for him, and I'm not going to say I cursed him. It wasn't my fault.
On cue, the zone pulls max distance to the north without a rocket ram, without any way of getting into the zone. Only 49 above as well, so for CR, panic systems have started to come into play. Wow, Stax. I mean, there's not much of a better time to use a slurp juice than when you're on 1 HP. Perfect time for it. Does, of course, have the rocket ram as well. Has an equally long rotation to make, but looking good in the process. 89 bills, looking the better of the situation and position than CR right now. But, of course, rotations can be dangerous when it comes to these rocket rams. All it takes is one misstep, one wrong landing, and you could end up back in the lobby. And I'm just keeping an eye on that feed because you never know who could pop up. Could it be one of our top 2 players? And Stax will certainly be hoping for that.
Yeah, he's made a perfect rotation above everybody else. You see more than half the lobby is stacked towards the southern portion of the map. Same thing for Grims. A lot less congestion the way he's rotating in, and by the time he gets there, the zone will open up even more. CR takes down 1, gets a good amount of loot for his efforts. That's the only thing that I had worried was the 26 builds he had moments ago. Now he's more than doubled up, almost quadrupled up on his materials, giving himself a little bit more of a sigh of relief, some would say, now that he can expend even more materials on his way towards the zone, because I think we all know he's going to need those materials.
That was the biggest sigh of relief I think anyone's ever done in the history of the universe, because he needed that refresh so badly. He needed a way to get into the zone. He needed the materials. Everything that he needed, he has just found, and that is the sign of a top-tier Fortnite player, being able to get what he needs when he needs it most. And he wants more. He's not stopping here. He's a greedy one because he wants another elimination. He knows how important eliminations can be when things are so close to the top. He's still on 85 points, leading the pack at the moment, but of course he still has to make his way in. There's a player right next door that goes down. He doesn't want to fall victim to the same situation, and it looks as though he's just about to make his way in. Not without a little bit of fire from below, though, so difficult situation for him. I think he's going to stay alive. I think he's looking good. Only 46 bills right now, though. Zone does pull back in his favor, so it's looking good if you're a CR fan right now. Things are looking strong. Yeah,
luck of the draw here that he finds his way in towards zone. He was able to get the refresh, gets the slap splashes as well, which means that he gets to save his slurp juices. And he gets that zone pull. Even though Stax gets the zone pull as well, he knows somebody is positioned exactly right next to him. That's Dolzier. This is where he's just trying to go and whittle down, get a couple of those pieces underneath his control, does the phase, and is quickly trying to rotate in towards the zone, or at least as close to it as humanly possible. Wow. And I think this is as close as you could possibly get without the zone opening up just yet. But as it continues to open up, the zone is moving. It gives Stacks a little bit more room to work with, and he finds a little bit of that fallen loot that somebody left behind. One man's trash is another man's treasure is what I always say.
For sure. It's not much, you know, it was only Siphon, but it's something to keep him going in this game, as he needs every ounce of luck, every ounce of materials to keep himself going throughout this end game. Of course, we have players like Piggle on the left side of the screen, not looking in a very good state at all. 0 builds, of course, 0 shield to heal his way back up as well, so he needs to try and find a refresh and fast. Maybe he needs to take a leaf out of CR's book when it comes to finding refreshes, because he needs it quick.
Chance right here for players to begin to separate themselves. One wrong move can really do you in at the end of the day. For Sanguine Sweets, as long as it stays towards the outskirts of the island, not going to be too much to worry about. But Stacks gets turned, he gets burned on by another player trying to break into the box, and he's still trying to hold on to his covers. And since it's wood, that opponent needs to know that he's a little bit weak. But he found some time, a moment to stabilize himself. Middy's first, Medin is second, before he begins to make his rotation. Luckily for him, he isn't too far from the front side of that zone, so he quickly can kind of use that cone, phase through again, and try to make as safe as a rotation as possible. But if he gets beamed, that could be the worst thing possible, because he already loses a lot of his resources, a lot of his heals, just to get to where he is now.
I love that, though. He didn't panic, and Piggle picks up a refresh. You can see right there, huge refresh for him. Remember, just a couple of seconds ago, he had no builds. Now he's looking very fruitful on the build side of things, but no, flying through the middle of the sky, denied by the explosive thing. I don't even know what it's called, but it's a thing that explodes, and he flew right into it, and now he's no longer in the game. What a way to go down at such a crucial moment.
Yeah, I think whoever shot that one didn't think it would actually get the elimination. It was probably trying to use it as a distraction to get from point A to point B. Talk about the points, top 25. Everybody at least getting something for their efforts here, but they need to hang on to this roller coaster ride as much as possible to get all those points they're actually fighting for. CR on one side, he's moved up to 90, 2 eliminations so far, playing safe up to this point. Evo on the other side, a different song and dance. He has 4 eliminations, and he's doing his best to try to make up for it here with his final 2 opportunities.
Stacks, though, front side of zone, gets there very effectively well, but unfortunately doesn't have the builds to keep himself safe. CR on the right side of the screen is looking pretty safe right now, but actually gets targeted by one of those turrets, looking like he's going to lose a lot of HP in the process, still getting targeted as he's flying through the sky. Stacks back inside of the zone, looking to try and get inside of a box, and unfortunately will not last too much longer, so CR has the upper hand in this game. How much of an advantage can he give himself? He's giving himself a good one right there, taking out Grimes. Huge elimination in the feed, because now he is in the driver's seat to take first place.
Yeah, it's all about building yourself as much of a cushion as possible going into that 6th and final game. A smooth rotation coming out from Evo. As long as you don't traject yourself too high up, you can be able to slide. You can even skip, do a little bit of a bunny hop with that rocket ram. Evo knows that one, and he's playing it absolutely perfect up until this point, but CR goes down. His chance to build that cushion goes right out the window.
Not bad, though. Top 15 for CR, top 12 I think it was there in the end. Not bad at all. We see Donkey slightly using a beautiful little rotation, using the Crash Pad Jr., actually using the glider redeploy as well to get inside of the front side of the zone. Beautiful stuff from him. 1 elimination, now got 0 builds. Saw the little refresh right there, but not able to go for it as another player decides to hop right on next to him. He's got a little bit of a noisy neighbor, and he wants to get out of there as soon as possible. He's moving towards the skies. He's flying up high. He's trying to find himself a high ground position, but he's not going to be able to find one. He's got straight onto another player. Unfortunately, though, that is his demise. And Dash Rooney does go down, but finds the elimination in the process, and they both fall back to the lobby.
Yeah, prime example of the double-edged sword that the rocket ramp is. He's able to get the elimination, goes out right after. Fungus takes down Omizi. Into the top 4 we go, and the majority of those placement points, including Cam, and the 5 eliminations. Talk about climbing up the leaderboard. This is his chance at perfection, but he's going against Fungus. Fungus is so weak. If Cam sniffs any of this weakness, he's going to continue to go. First shot's going to be landed. Follows up with the combat SMG, gets his 6th elimination, and takes game number 5.
Wow, what a performance from Cam. I was a little bit skeptical there, dropping down when he still had the material, still had the sustain up on high ground, but it worked out. This is Cam we're talking about. This is one of the finest controller players on the region. We know what he can do, and yet again, Jacob, he didn't disappoint.
Yep, and he's just trying to claw himself in the conversation. We saw CR go down. I didn't see exactly the points that he had, but I know it was under 100. So as long as you keep yourself within 20, 30, 40 points, at least you have a chance, especially if they do go down very, very early on. You just got to give yourself a chance going into this last game. And you can see these are the moments right here with CR. At this point in time, he's already overtaken first, and he's just trying to build his lead from there on out.
I mean, how does he does it? How does he do it, I should say? How does he find these refreshes at such prime positions and prime moments in the game? Piggle doing exactly the same as well, just making his way through this endgame, not quite as successfully, and this was the refresh that got him through this endgame. Unfortunately, not quite having the best end to it, but a really, really solid performance from some of our top players. But of course, some of the players lower down also had a solid game too. Cam finally coming alive here in game number 5 is what we like to see from him.
Yeah, it did. You know, even seeing it again, it did look a little bit risky there from Cam as he dropped down low, but hey, if you're going to be the best, you got to beat the best, and he definitely took that one by force. As we check out the Game 5 standings, he gets 42 points for that game alone. Fungus is able to get 35. Everybody else still trying to make up for it, and right now, I'm just kind of looking for Piggle. I'm looking for CR, see where they ended up. CR got 17 in that game, placing 13th.
Yeah, not bad at all. I think Piggle was a little bit lower down, so not quite doing quite as well. Yeah, there you see him, 28. So only 9 points for Piggle right there. It was a really, really difficult zone for him as well, of course. We know he lands at the Frenzy Fields area. That was all the way up at Slappy Shores, that zone, and of course up in the Sanguine Suites area. So really, really difficult zone for him, as we see some of our other players that didn't quite have as good of a performance in that last game. But as we head on into game number 6, this is the moment. This is the ultimate game of the day. This is where teams have to, or players have to think about, how am I going to maximize my points from this game? Anything goes. It's now or never.
Yeah, and honestly, it plays a little bit of mind games on players, those at the top of the leaderboard and on the middle of the leaderboard, because, you know, you got to think, what do I do here when I'm in first place? Do I change it up? Do I play business as usual? Because you never know what's going to happen in the final game, because everybody else that may not be in that top spot on the leaderboard might try to get a little bit more aggressive, pick up some points, even if they may be out of contention for first place. We talked about the thousands of dollars that's still up for grabs for each and every one of these placements as you continue to move up.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it so often where things can change so much in game number 6 of tournaments. Now, I'm going to put you in a situation here, Jacob, right? If you were in second place, as maybe Piggle is, maybe whoever is in second place, and I think CR is in first place, if you're just about 10 points away, would you land on CR? Would you try and take them out early so they're not going to cause you a problem later on in the game, or are you just going to stick to your own game plan and play it out?
It all depends on how familiar I am with his drop spot and how contested it is with some of the other players here in the lobby. I definitely think that's a smart decision, especially if you continue to look down the leaderboard, how widespread that gap is. But if I'm Piggle, I maybe at least think about it. I toy with it. Maybe I talk to my coach, talk to my parents, call up who I need to, explain the situation, and then kind of see how they feel about it. But man, I'm a glass half full type of guy, and I think they should probably play this one out if you're in the top 2 or even top 3.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's enough of that gap, I don't think, between second and third to really make that play worthwhile. Yeah, exactly. And I think there's enough of a chance, hopefully, for our second place player to overtake first. Of course, we don't actually know who's going to be at the top of the leaderboard quite yet. We'll, of course, be keeping you guys up to date with those very, very shortly. And it's going to be a close last game. It's going to be a very, very interesting last game. Last games are always very hectic, you could say. Are we expecting a little bit more craziness off spawn, Jacob, or are we going to see more of the same?
I think a little bit more craziness off spawn, especially on these spots that might have 3, 4, 5 people contesting, like Naughty Nets. You may see a little bit more aggression going out because these players realize, like, I already have nothing to lose, especially if they're in that $100 threshold on that leaderboard. You know, I might as well try to go for 50. Might as well go for 100 more, 200 more, try to line my pockets with more money and at least go down swinging because, hey, like I said, you have nothing left to lose. There's a minimum amount of prize money you're going to get, and you already reached that, so might as well just shoot for the stars.
Forecast Towers. We saw Piggle go for it in game number 4, have a very, very good game. Of course, he knew where the next zones were. Yep. Game number 5, which we just watched, he decided against it. He actually went for it, and then there's another player that was actually waiting at the claim sort of station. Does he go for it? Does he go for the forecast tower? It's found him so much success in the end. Does he need a massive game? Would you go for it? I don't know myself.
So. I think so. I think he at least does something very, very similar to what he did in that last game. And I think the same could be said if Dash or CR or Stacks, a lot of those guys get that forecast tower on that side, is you at least have to have the thought. What if it's not contested? Move over in that direction. Kind of feel it out from there. And I think Piggle in that last game made the right decision. Even though he didn't go through with trying to execute and get in the forecast tower, he gave himself a chance at the bare minimum. And then he realized it's not worth my time. They dropped the card, disengaged, and kept on with the rest of the game. Because I feel like if he would have tried to execute on getting that forecast tower, he maybe goes down earlier and he's at a much different spot on the leaderboard.
So many options, so many opportunities for our players at the top end of the leaderboard, but the only option for most will be that first place spot, and I'm sure we'll be seeing some crazy action going down in game number 6. It's still all to play for. Top of the leaderboard, number 1, first place spot, walking home with a considerable chunk of change. It's not over yet, and game number 6 is going to be very, very exciting stuff as we see Piggle going out of the bus. 89 points. So CR actually ended that game on 96 points, who is in first place right now. So we know the deficit that Piggle has to make up. It's 7 points that separates the two. We can see them on the screen, 96 to 89. We see Dash in 84 points in third place, and Stacks, who is actually at 76 points in fourth place right now. So even all the way down to fourth place. You can see it on the screen right now, Stacks. It's only 20 points behind first place spot, and Stacks already getting potentially beamed out of the sky, but no, it's okay. Donkey slightly in fifth place with 71 points. It's still all to play for the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah, I think anybody here in the top 5 has a chance to take the crown at the end of the day. And it just gets increasingly harder the more and more you go down that leaderboard. It becomes a little bit more out of your control, a little bit less about, can I have a pop-off game? It becomes more about, will these guys go down early and give me the opportunity to have a pop-off game here matter? And I think we can probably see with Slightly landing very, very close to Piggle, there's an opportunity for an early engage between the two, especially depending on where the zone goes. So it's going to be a very, very interesting game here in Game 6 as we go down to the wire. It could be just as exciting as the one that we saw yesterday on stream.
Remember earlier on, Donkey Slightly was actually uncontested at the north side of Frenzy Field. A little bit of a spanner in the works for him right here as another player has decided to take up that main building. So not only is he being contested, he's actually being out-dropped at his own drop spot, made it a little bit of complacency right there. And I think that's why we see him not 50-50. Of course, 5th place in the leaderboard right now. You don't really want to be taking things to a 50-50, but for Cam, 10th place right now, 56 points, although you can't see on the screen. Looking strong, solid last game. Can he mount an attack on that top 5?
Yeah, I think anybody here at this stage realizes that what it's going to take to become your PlayStation Cup NA build champion. It's been definitely a grueling 5 games going into our 6th here, and I know already for some of these players who might be contested, it's not as easy as maybe they would think it was. You see a lot of that talk on social media about how they may be the best, but when push comes to shove, it just takes a real challenge to come out on top. Cubs lighting towards Shady still. So you hear the C4 going down. He instantly reacts to try to get on out. His opponent knows that might be Fungus. Other shots coming in from multiple directions. That he's by himself with no HP. It looks like they're beelining him. Expo on the other side, causing a little bit of that chaos. Finally going to get picked up by Fungus, though.
Yeah, Fungus making his presence known again on 71 points, so not doing too bad at all. Of course, that elimination going from his previous points to now 71, looking pretty strong. Expo, though, is on the receiving end of potentially some more action. I think this is what we were talking about. Players are just more likely to fight. Players are more likely to take risks, and I think from what we've seen before, this hasn't really been contested. There's measly little capture point at Shady Stilts. It hasn't been an area of massive wars, but we've seen a little bit more action going down in this game here, Jacob.
I like this here from Fungus, though, even though he didn't have the heals and all he had was the slap splashes. Doesn't want to waste them, utilize them too early on in this game. He quickly finds, some coconuts, some mushrooms to try to get the shields up, or at least as much as possible. Expo probably feeling a little bit too safe here. Probably thought Fungus was disengaged and trying to get on out, but he turns right back to the scene of the crime. Man, it's just one little cheeky Maven shot before continuing to look for those shields. He doesn't want to risk it all with 71 points. He's at least in conversation of taking away that first place spot.
Yeah, he is. Rehan, though. Nice little elimination just outside of Breakwater Bay. Good plays right there. Actually, of course, these are the sort of plays you have to make for the other player on the receiving end. Unfortunately, their day's over for the night. Might as well, maybe get a cup of tea. Although this is the NA version of the show, so maybe it's something different. Maybe my British is coming out there. But get some sort of little slurp juice or something and enjoy watching the rest of the show, of course. Those players that are falling now, that aren't quite able to close out the game, I'm sure they'll be a little bit disappointed, but everyone walks away with cash here, Jacob. So it's not too bad.
too bad at this stage in the game just yet. 84 players still left alive. Rihan trying to make a quick rotation away from Breakwater Bay. Just judging where this edge of zone is, it is going to continue to move south just a little bit, maybe center up from there. Have a little bit more of an opinion when I see the whole thing, but for now, I think Rihan is making the correct decision to try to farm up, loot up, and just begin to rotate in towards the zone. Does have a decent loadout to start. I think the next stop for him would be to try to get as close to a weapon cache as possible and upgrade his loadout.
For sure, the weapon cache is going to be so vital for these players in this last game, because if you want a big game, that's almost vital. Having those slurp juices, having that boost of metal, you can spend less time farming off spawn, and even if your drop spot doesn't have much of it, you can actually get it wherever you land, which is absolutely vital when it comes to players that are landing at less than stacked drop spots. Darius, though, someone we haven't seen too much of today. Looking to try and make their presence known here on low ground, trying to refarm some of that brick and using the mud to make their rotation that little bit quicker. Mud was recently nerfed, so it's not quite as quick as it once was, but still a good way of getting around the map, and of course using those flowers to get their HP back up. But we've seen this before. Piggle stand inside of the bush. Looks as though he's setting up a play to go for the forecast tower if it has spawn. I don't quite see if it has. Looking at the way he's playing, I think it might just have.
At least he has his plan set out. Just kind of bunker down, play calm, cool, collected. Almost the total opposite going down the left side. Darius is just trying to put down as many shots as possible, disengaging, getting tagged up on the tail end as well. An interesting loadout, like in builds particularly, doesn't really have any variation of the shotgun. I can see it being a plausible opportunity in zero builds, but here in builds, I almost think it's a must to carry any shotgun, let alone combat SMG, just kind of being your main source of damage. Maybe he just didn't find one overall, but he's still getting tagged up in the distance. Finally using those slap splashes, finds two more into a tent. He's probably thinking to himself, maybe I should go camping more often.
Maybe. I mean, it provides some sort of protection. You know, maybe set inside of there. I prefer builds myself to protect against some damage, but who knows? Chuck down a tent, spend half an hour trying to put it up, realize you put it up the wrong way, and then end up going away anyway and staying in a hotel. But that's just the way it goes. We see Darius rotating away, doesn't want anything to do with that campsite anymore. He's deciding to get inside of the mud as well. And Dash on the right side of the stream, one of our top players, 84 points. You can see 0 eliminations for him. But going into this game, he was 3rd place, and there's Pump getting an elimination. I said it, I wanted to see more from him, and we're seeing it yet again.
Just really giving us a show here for the end. Mentioned again, CR first place, 96 points. Piggle second place, 89. Then you have Dash here in 3rd place with 84 points. These are the top 3 in the conversation. Of course, 4th and 5th, they still have a chance as well, but it's a little bit more out of their control. And this is where you see the difference in the game plan going through for a lot of these players. Zone pulling towards the south, but it does have that western lean, and I think it could center up, maybe give us a Shattered Slabs end game, maybe Eclipse Estate, something that we saw earlier on the day. But I do think it's going to continue to pull towards the west overall.
Yeah, more than likely. That's a lot of the ways that it goes. So for someone that is on the sort of east side of the zone, just like Dash, it's going to be a little bit of a difficult rotation. How you time that is absolutely vital. Piggle, we checked in with earlier. Not quite sure if they actually captured that that forecast tower. Looks as though they were set up to get it. So we'll have to see where he's positioning himself in the later stage of the game. CR, not quite got that same luxury as him, but you know, solid little position to be in. Of course, just outside of his drop spot of Shattered Slabs. And this is the rotation that Dash has got to try and make. I like how he's getting out early, making sure to not stay inside of Slappy and try to out-heal the Storm and try and farm up those extra little bit of materials. He's just going to get out. Got those Crash Pad Juniors as well. You have to think he's got the roaming redeploy augment too. I'm excited to see if he can use that to his advantage, because he needs a big game, Jacob. He needs a solid game as he's trying to get into the zone. Maybe he's going to try and play for his cash here, but he does need something big, because although he is in contention, he needs to, of course, outplace the players above him, and yeah, he gets his cash, which is absolutely perfect stuff. And there it is.
Rotating. Next to 3 people, though, one of them that he did put a couple of shots on, so for Dash, he at least knows and is aware of a couple players that are still in that direction. Being the first to the weapon cache means whoever is second there has to watch out. Piggle has to watch out as well. Getting dropped down almost to about 50 HP. Quickly pops the first of his 2 slurp juices, trying to get himself a little bit more footing here in this match. Definitely has an opportunity. Only 7 points shy of that first place spot, and now he's going back to the tower that he left behind moments ago. For some, Storm Surge has been a little bit of a problem. For others, just like Piggle, they really set themselves up right to kind of really not have to worry about it. And I think that's what he's doing here. Very, very early on, it is zone 3. He's just looking for all these players that have to rotate by, just so he can get a couple of shots on them. That way he doesn't have to worry about Surge later in the game.
That's absolutely vital. When you go into a game of this magnitude, having that proactive nature of gameplay, as we see CR doing as well, just trying to make sure that there's as little things that you have to worry about as possible later on. If you can eliminate any of those sort of worries early on, then it's absolutely vital that you can do so, and that's what they're doing right now. They're just looking at their cones. They can see some of the players that are rotating in. They're trying to make sure that they can get as many tags as they can to make sure that damage is not going to be a problem. Usually in the last games of tournaments, it gets a little bit more aggressive, so we don't see as high thresholds as we might have seen earlier on in the tournament, but who knows how things could play out. I think it's always better to be safe than sorry. As Yasir, we've seen this player absolutely double keying before, and he's going to try and use this C4 to actually attack this player. Edgy is inside of the box. Wow. Edgy's down to 1 HP, just about on a slither of HP we can see, but actually getting out, evading the attention of this C4. Is he going to still try and use it? He is. He's trying to make this C4 work. It's already done a lot of the work. I think he just has to get inside of this box right now, get aggressive, get one little tag. He just needs a little tickle, a hit with a little feather maybe onto his pinky toe. That would eliminate him. It looks as though he's on 1 HP. That's all that it takes. Surely he's going to find this wall, finds the shot, finds the elimination, and finally, Edgy drops down. Yeah, and that was close. You see there's 2 other players south of him on that mini-map. We're beginning to shoot in that direction, and if you're Yasir, you put in all that work, and then somebody just quickly tries to steal it away. He made a little bit of a misstep. It did look like he was going to try to get the gold sharp tooth, but accidentally re-drops it for the rocket ram. But since he already made his rotation, doesn't want to double back and make himself a target now that he is out in the open. Dash, 85 points, trying to save as much of the heals as possible. Choosing not to grab the rocket ram, but the crash pad junior. If he's able to combine that with the roaming redeploy augment, that'll give him the perfect rotation going into the end game. You can kind of see where already Rift Island is about to spawn in. Just outside of Shattered Slabs between Shattered and Rumbled Ruins. That gives a lot of line of sights over a lot of players, but I think luckily for anybody that is on the low ground, once you go into that jungle biome, there are a lot of trees, there's a lot of foliage that you can hide behind. I just saw Piggle in the feed right there, picking up elimination. That's going to be huge in the race for first place, because now that's 2 less points than he needs to beat CR by. So if Piggle wants to overtake that first place spot, he now needs 5 points better than what CR can achieve, or 6 points if he wants to, of course, overtake him. This is really an important game for so many players, and the zone is in the center of the map. So yeah, you can see on the bottom of the screen right there, Piggle, 1 elimination, 90 points. So looking pretty strong right now. Only 7 points behind CR. Wow. This is the damage from CR already coming through. The island is all the way up on top. Of course, so many players that are looking to claim this. They're looking for a big game. For Faith, they need a big game. You see CR in the feed actually picking up an elimination. So that's another elimination to add to his many. Yeah, I think this is the most aggressive that we've seen on top of Rift Island. Not only is it the highest numbers of players, but most shots onto some of these covers that we've seen. Faith narrowly escaping being a target, letting Yoimi take a lot of that heat. Here's the shield getting cracked, goes out and around, but takes a big shot. Forced to rethink his position here. Even drops elevation a little bit. And a lot of his heals are actually going to be expended. He's not even going to be able to get to a 200 effective shield in HP off of this. So that was one of those high-risk, high-reward plays that just didn't work out for him. And as he saw Faith trying to disengage, go on out. He thinks it's a clear 1v1 between him and Yoimi. That's where things get really difficult for Faith right there. That's almost the worst thing that can possibly happen. If you try and make a big play, it doesn't work out. You don't even get what you wanted for it, and you've now lost HP, shield, and of course some builds in the process. You've actually just had a net loss, but luckily for Faith, they have got some keys that they can of course use to open up this vault. A little bit of metal in here, a little bit of those slurp little juices, or of course the barrels, I should say. Can actually heal Faith back up to, I believe, 190. Some decent chests, some decent loot in here, so they're not going to be too worse off after that. It was worth a shot.
Definitely worth any opportunity here in this final game of the day. This might be a smart thing here by Yoimi. Instead of contesting it, he's letting it go up to the top side. And he's going to continue to try to break through. But Yeezy has that edit. Faith is returning back, trying to reclaim what was originally his, and that's that top spot. Goes forward, gets some elevation. This is where the C4 might be able to reign supreme. Combine this right with a nice well-placed shot, you can do a ton of damage onto your opponents down below, especially since they don't expect it. It does look like he's just biding his time, waiting for this fight to fully break out before he throws some C4 in there to try to third-party it. But the longer that he waits, the harder it's going to be to find any one of these eliminations, as both players will try to look to disengage. C4 tryingly going out. It's Yoimi who now becomes the target. Faith doesn't want to drop it all in just yet. I think he's just trying to make that smart play, using his brains just a little bit rather than forcing any situation.
Yeah, I like that. Trying to C4 play, trying to any sort of attempt to try and get some of that loot, but realistically, how much of that loot is still going to be there? How much value is still going to be in that center of the Rift Island? Probably not that much. And of course, depleting in value as time goes on. You can see on Yuumi, 3 of those slurp juices. I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the loot that he's got from this Rift Island, but actually making a little sneak play into Faith, who's inside of the house. Could be a little break and entry for Yuumi if he does want to get involved, but on the other side of the coin, CR down on the low ground. Just checking the augments, making sure he's making the right choices, not making the wrong decisions, as Piggle also down on low ground. They're quite close to each other, I think, quite in a similar sort of vicinity, so we could see them clash heads at some point on a rotation of some sort. Dash, 0 eliminations for him. We've seen him rotate all the way from Sappy Shore, so that's why his builds aren't quite looking as strong as some other people's, but you know, he's got the heals to match, so it's not too bad. Let's see where this next zone's going to go. It's going to be a little bit of time until we get to see it. 3 seconds, and then we'll see who has a favorable zone. And it's everyone that's on the congested side.
A lot of the players that are already at the top of the leaderboard, I wouldn't say been gifted the zone, because it comes through from making those wise decisions to position yourself there, but it definitely makes their job that much easier coming into this end game. Some more than others, though, as CR still has to try to rotate in. 7-point differential between him and second place. He's keeping up, going toe-to-toe. Kind of see, this might not be a bad position for him to box up at due to those 2 slurp plants, but I think a lot of the players, they rotate in from the north side of the zone, are probably going to be utilizing those as well. Try to make it part of their game plan and path to try to get in toward the zone. CR finally finds some comfortability here. Wouldn't say it's the slap dab center, but it's not too far from it. So he's just hoping that it does pull in his direction. That way he can keep this show alive. Keep the hope alive from him being able to take that first place spot.
Yeah, Stacks needs a big end game here. 77 points. Got some decent loot, some decent materials as well going into this end game. So the easier this rotate is, the easier the next game or the next zone is going to be for him. 48 below, when is that going to stake? No, it's going to be plenty above the Storm Surge threshold. Not a problem at all. 423 above. That's one less thing he has to worry about in this end game, because his mind has to be clear. He has to be focused on charging down on that top of the leaderboard. Of course, first place is what he'll have his eyes on. Is still a mountain to climb, and same with Piggle. Still got a ways to go. CR looking so strong as he's done so all day. Looking so prevalent when it comes to eliminations as well. And he's not afraid. Look at this, jumping inside of the box. Unfortunately getting beamed from another angle, and that's just a little indication, just a little taster as to what could happen. CR has the potential to find eliminations in endgame. He has the potential to find those refreshes to sustain himself longer, but sometimes he gets a little bit too aggressive. We saw it there. Of course, going back into his box to heal up. His heals are diminishing, they're depleting. Piggle's a little bit more of a calm and cool, collected player. Won't go for those sort of plays if it means risking his game. And that's the 2-horse race, if you like, that we have right now in terms of play styles. It's really heating up, and we see 2 very different play styles, very different players, but still finding a lot of success.
Yeah, with the 7 points, that differential, Piggle's looking to win this game, and it's CR kind of matches him toe-to-toe. He needs to win the game, and then CR needs to get top 3 or less. That's the kind of situation we're in for Piggle. So it literally could go down to the wire with it changing hands at a moment's notice. Piggle's just kind of playing the game of placement, and he knows as well as probably you and I that these eliminations, at least the opportunities, will naturally present himself as the end game does go on. People out of builds, out of shambles, and right now Piggle takes a huge amount of damage. Shields just dropped off in the blink of an eye, forced to use his last slurp juice. His opponent provides, getting a little bit more aggressive. More players shooting some shots in that direction as well, trying to make it hard for him to try to survive. This is a huge moment for Piggle. He goes right back in, returns fire, revives, might regret that decision, but Piggle has done more than enough damage to try to clean this one up. But does he continue to try to fight this with so many players nearby? He says, I've done too much to let this one slip out of my hands.
He wants it. He wants this refresh. He almost needs it at this stage, but as expected, decides to disengage. Actually, just get on out of that situation. He knows how important this game is, and CR likewise. He's actually able to find himself a little bit of a rotation with the rocket ram, but actually gets hit in the process as well as another flying person that's also been trying to do the same thing, and they've actually had to stagger their rotation a little bit here. So CR not taking any chances using those heals on this rotation. He really wants to make sure this is as good as a game as it can be. Don't key slightly. Also, likewise, actually landing on one of these slurp plans, so he's able to keep healing up. CR finding a little bit of loot, not the elimination, but he's going to be able to, hopefully for him, get those slurp juices. Of course, Vex on the other side of the wall, trying to get involved in the box. So he has the HP advantage. CR gets the shot as well, but no, is he going to go down? There's no siphon. He's not going to be able to get the elimination. Of course, he goes down in Storm, and that is our first player down and out.
I saw 98 points as that threshold. Piggle, hopefully he saw him in the feed, so now he doesn't have to make any daring plays. If he wants to take this first place spot, it is his for the taking as we enter our 8th zone going into the 9th. Only a couple of seconds left before it begins to open up, and you can see the entirety of the lobby already on the western edge of the previous zone, ready to rotate through. So Piggle definitely has a decision to make, and luckily for him though, there's already a cone placed in his box, so he could make the phase rocket ram play to try to find the most safety in his rotation, but it's definitely going to be a risk with a lot of the lobby probably thinking to do something similar.
We saw Piggle in that exact same situation that CR was in, and he decided not to jump in the box on the time of the rotation. CR decided the opposite, and unfortunately for CR, it didn't quite work out. He'll be hoping right now that Piggle can't find his way through this game for as long as possible. See Jargy all the way up on top of these trees right now. Stax also wanted to have a stay inside of this lobby. 79 points for him right now, so he's still definitely in the running for a good placement in the end. His next door neighbor Dash also still in the running, but no, he gets jumped in. His game is ruined. His game is over, and that's it. It's Extortion that takes him out, and Piggle actually rotating his way and also getting hit by one of these rocket rams. A little flailing rocket ram next to him, and unfortunately he has to lose a little bit of HP for that, using those heals, which I'm sure he would have liked to have saved. 92 points. Remember, it was a 98 points that CR ended on, so he's still got a little ways to go.
Yep. For him, this is all or nothing. Dash is close by. Dash probably playing on Piggle's demise because there's more than enough points left on the board, and that's a nice shot. A little sneak peekaboo attack coming out from Dash. Pressure coming in from the other side of the lobby. Dash has to let this one go, or else he would risk way too much to try to make it a possibility. He's put himself in the conversation to take that first place spot, but it goes through Piggle first. Obviously, CR has set the bar, but he's down, so it goes through Piggle first, and now imagine if these two end up toe-to-toe. One of them goes down as Piggle once again trying to make that phase rotate play with that rocket ram, trying to find the most safety. He knows Storm Surge isn't going to be a worry as we enter into our top 38 players still left alive.
I like that from Dash, using those Crash Pad Juniors to get himself to the front side of the zone. Piggle, though, is not going to be quite as safe. He's going to have to use this rocket ram. Things can go crazy. Take a look at the left side of the screen. Is he going to be able to get in unscathed? Right now, it looks as though he is. Not without hitting some other players with some damage in the process. Also taking some damage himself inside of the box. Hits the shot and likely just about gets away. And he does get inside the box. Takes out the other player as well. So there is an elimination for Piggle, keeping himself alive, keeping himself in this game. But for how much longer?
Huge find. He just needs to buy himself a couple more seconds and answer your question about how much longer. He gets the slurp juice. You see her almost seeing his life flash before his very eyes, but luckily he lands in the water, has a slurp juice, so it's not going to take too long before he finds himself in toward the zone. Dash using the Crash Pad Junior and that roaming redeploy, trying to use it as his big rotation tool. And Piggle not only found the heals, but he got a huge loadout upgrade as well. 91 points for Dash. This one's coming down to the wire with most of the placement points still left on the board.
Dash has got no bills, so he's only got one to his name. I saw Piggle still having 50 of those wood bills, so absolutely huge for him, or 500 woods. That's absolutely massive for him right there. It's an absolutely huge moment. Dash actually using the grind vines to get himself to the front side of the zone. Really, really great stuff. And Piggle having to make his way into the zone. 73 bills to his name on the front side of the zone. He has to be so careful. Still does have 2 eliminations, and of course that slurp juice, so he can out heal. He's on 98 points. Could this be the time that he falls? It just ticked over 100 points for Piggle. So right now, he He looks to be in the driver's seat, but Dash has something else to say about that as well. Hits a shot going inside the box, 97 points for him. He just needs to stay alive, Jacob.
The daring play into the box with 2 players, 99 points. If he's able to get this elimination as well, he will overtake that first place spot, but he's stuck right now. Everything is jumbled, almost doesn't even know what's going on, has to edit through, puts himself onto a big play. He has 100 points as well, tying up in that first place spot. So much destruction. He runs out of builds into the top 6. He surpassed his opponents at 101 to overtake that first place spot, but can he hold on to it? Is anybody else in the conversation as Dash goes down to pump?
Yassir, though, still in contention, 87 points. If he finds these last 2 eliminations and, of course, the victory royale, he could have a say in that first place spot. You can see him going all the way up onto the high ground. Maybe that could be a misstep, though, because, of course, he can get looked at and beamed so easily. Landing on the tree, though, of course, you can't break them, so he can contain this high ground. 27 builds for him, so he can still build if he does decide to go down. Regular, trying to cause a problem, trying to spoil the party up on high ground. Hits a great shot on low ground and takes out the guard low.
That was a huge opportunity, but Swexy goes down. Regular just needs a couple seconds, a moment here to pop both of his big pots. That'll put him into tip-top shape. You see her looking down low, taking too much damage to the zone. 70 HP, one well-played shot from Regular will end Yassir's run at 90 points. There's not enough. There's at least 5 for the first place. He could definitely put some more money in his pockets with a victory here, but Regular struggling to find his footing, and Yassir takes advantage. Elbow from the top rope. He takes the game with 4 eliminations and scores 95 points.
Wow, what a crazy endgame we just had. Yassir just about clutching up the victory, not quite enough to take that first place spot, you have to imagine. I thought for a second he might have just had it, but of course, so much money, so much placements that he might have just jumped from that game alone. Of course, we have to talk about it though. Dash coming out of seemingly nowhere. Nobody would have guessed that he wouldn't be able to do that, but he did.
Yeah, and right there we saw it literally live in action. 98 points, somebody goes down. 100 points, somebody goes down. 101, somebody goes down as well. But did we actually see that final score? Do we know actually who won? Was it Piggle? Was it Dash? Did Yassir do enough at the very end to climb up the leaderboard? While we let the scores get tallied up here, let's take a look at some replays and how some of these players have been playing through Game 6. CR at one point was in first place. You're seeing him really take control of the competition up until here is where he finally went down.
Yeah, of course, you know, the points can still come through at the end of the game, so we actually do not know who actually came out on top. It could have been Dash, it could have been Piggle. And of course, we just don't know, but this play right here from Dash, that is what got him the materials to actually make his way through that endgame. Yassir, what looked like a bit of a misplay when he actually went up on top with no builds. This was one of those situations where he actually just hit that big shot, connected with the SMG shots as well. That is exactly what you want to do. And of course, as we relive some of the moments from that game, we take a look back at all of our game winners from today. Congratulations to everyone that, of course, did manage to win the game today. Blur Antics kicking us off with that expert. Of course, Don't Key Slightly game 3 on 1 with a crazy game 4. Of course, Cam coming through with the game 5 win. And of course, Yassir, game number 6. What a day, Jacob. It's been crazy.
Yeah, Yassir, I feel like with that game 6, that's almost all left that he had to do. He's been pretty consistent throughout each and every one of those games, and he tops it off with a VR in the finals lobby. And you got to think, how many points did he jump up because of that last VR that he got? So even if he didn't get first, I don't know. We're going to see what this leaderboard looks like, but he definitely earned himself at least a few $1,000 more for that final game alone.
You want to see the leaderboard, Jacob? You want to see it?
I do. Don't.
I'm down to see it. I hope you guys at home are ready, because I am certainly ready for the leaderboard. I'm excited to see what went down, of course, today. The overall standings, and like yesterday, if you did tune in to the Zero build, we're doing it again. We're making you wait. The bottom to the top. These are our 81st and 99th, of course, 61st through 80th as well. Of course, not the best day for these players. I'm sure they would have expected better. I'm sure they'll be, going back and watching the VODs and trying to improve, but they still walk home with some cash, Jake. Yeah,
it's definitely, much important, much needed cash that a lot of these players could probably use, no matter what they're going to go ahead and spend it on. It's definitely something that is huge. Sometimes it's not even about the money. You know as well as I do, it's about the bragging rights. It's about knowing that you've competed with some of the best players in the world and was able to make some money throughout all your efforts. But this is it. Time. The drum roll. Our final page to pass to see who's won our PlayStation NA Build Cup champion.
It's Dash by one singular point. Look at that top 4. We had a sneaky suspicion it was going to be Dash, but there were extra points to be added on top as well. Piggle, who was in the driving seat for that end game when we saw CR going down, who was also in the driving seat at the beginning of that game. It's just been turned completely on its head. Of course, Yassi are now actually overtaking CR in third place. So actually it was only, it was 3 points between first and fourth. Every single person had 1 point in between them.
Yeah, let's say 1 point separated our top four from each and every one of those plays. That's one elimination. That's surviving just a little bit longer in your previous games. And honestly, it goes to show that these PlayStation Cups really do deliver the excitement. Back-to-back times on stream from EU to NA. It goes down to our sixth and final game. And it's 1 point that separates the champion versus the runner-up.
Dash, what a fantastic performance all day. And if you've been inspired by what you've just seen today and you want to compete yourself, I know I have been, I'm sure you are as well, Jacob.
Yep.
You can go to compete.playstation.com to take part in some more tournaments, of course, in the PlayStation Tournaments website. Have a little look on there, see what you want to play. Of course, not just Fortnite on there as well, some plenty of other games that you can take part in. And if you want to take part in the Discord server as well, then make sure to join it. The QR code, the link, of course, is on the screen as well. You can, of course, join the community Discord to find regular updates on esports events, articles, videos, and of course meet with others to improve your game. Make sure to check that out. Maybe react to what you've seen today because there's plenty of action that went down here, Jacob.
Yeah, I'm definitely in that Discord. Still trying to find some people to play with whose backpack's big enough to carry someone like myself. But let me tell you guys, I bring the entertainment. Don't worry. While you're carrying, I'll make sure to cast your victory. And maybe we could turn into clips and some content, all thanks to PlayStation.
Yeah, and speaking of entertainment, of course, do not miss the MLB The Show 23 Championship Series. It is actually already underway. The last round of qualifiers is on September the 16th to 17th. You see the wildcard qualifier on September the 23rd and 24th. Of course, all of that from the group stage all the way up to the grand final is going to be streamed on the SDS, Twitch, and YouTube. So make sure to check all of that out. If you want to learn more, then make sure to go to mlbthe.show/6988B7. You can see the link just on the screen right there. It's a bit of a mouthful, so make sure to check that as well. But what a day it's been, Jacob. I think we have to give a shout out to our winner today. Absolutely incredible stuff. It was one of the most intense endings I've ever seen to a Fortnite tournament, but big shout out to Dash.
Yeah, honestly, one misstep in the end game would have cost Dash everything, but he held on. He stayed confident. He even made the daring plays at the end to secure himself that #1 spot. But I think everybody in the top four deserves like a huge round of applause, a pat on the back. 1 point differential between each and every one of those placements. They definitely entertained and put on a show. So a full-on thank you from myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise, myself. Of course, CR going into that game in first place spot, now in fourth place. That just shows how quickly the tides can turn. And that's what Fortnite's all about, Jacob.
Yeah, it's definitely true. It just goes to show that no matter how confident, how far ahead you may feel in some of these games, I think he entered with a 7-point lead. Things could turn on its side at a drop of a hat. And you can see a lot of these guys in our top 5, all of them had super well average times alive, 23 minutes each, all of them having such consistent performances throughout the entirety of the day. And honestly, I don't know. I would rather see games this close rather than a blowout. So thank you once again.
Yeah, definitely. It's been an absolute blast casting with you as always. Tell the people at home, where can they find you on socials? I'm sure they want to follow you.
Yeah, my name on social is Jacob_MVPR. So go ahead and give me a huge shout out. Maybe we can make some content together, and just maybe a PlayStation comes out with maybe a duo cup. Maybe I might have myself in the arena this time around instead of casting it.
I'd love to see it. And of course, you can find me at MiniMinerYT on most socials, I'll say, some other ones as well, but we'll leave those out. But thank you to everyone for tuning in today. It's been an absolute blast commentating this event, of course, hosting it as well. Hope you guys have enjoyed at home. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you another time for some more Fortnite action.
Gaming is defined by moments.
It is intense.
The joy of victory and the thrill of overcoming challenges. Welcome to our home of competitive gaming, where we can all experience exciting esports moments.
The final 1v1 of the game here.
And celebrate the pros and the rising stars.
I do want to see a female in the MCS.
Bringing you guides and deep dives.
Horizon can go up, but she can't go up fast.
And tournaments where the community competes.
Wait! Did he get? No way!
Whether you're in a heated match,
Back, let's go!
or watching along at the edge of your seat.
A duo taking down a trio.
Let's create moments from the games you love.
He'll take it!
Join us and subscribe to our channel to follow everything esports on PlayStation.
PlayStation. PlayStation.